Hello and a very good afternoon, good evening to you all. I am Sankalp, Chaturvedi, Director of the Gandhi Centre for Inclusive Innovation here at Imperial College, London. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to our annual Social Impact Day 2021. Every year on this day, we at the Gandhi Centre connect with the visionaries, practitioners, policymakers, academics, and most importantly, students to engage with important and transformative ideas which can give direction and transform lives. And in the process, create tangible social impact. Second year in a row, we are celebrating this day virtually. And before we start the exciting sessions that you are waiting for, I want to acknowledge and appreciate the Herculean efforts of healthcare and other key workers around the globe and various scientists who have been tirelessly working very hard so that we can all feel and act normal again. Even though we are hoping for a better 2021, we have a long way to go. Some countries are doing better than the others in managing crisis, but with the arrival of vaccines, the light at the end of tunnel is more visible than the last year. There's a lot more work to do for us to feel normal. Every one of us need to follow local guidelines and wait for normality, and that too patiently. Today, the theme of our conference is the future of purpose-driven work. We want to initiate ripple of change by talking openly about purpose, a very powerful word which has seen a resurgence within the last year. Perhaps because most of the world has been suffering, more and more people and organizations have started reevaluating their purpose for future. Probably the renewed purpose has led many to transform and revitalize the whole future of work and work styles. Many companies have closed down, others are doing well, and some working digitally. Many companies have announced that they will be 100% virtual now onwards. But the basic question is, where does it all start? At the core purpose comes from a response to a very simple yet elusive question. Why? Why should we change? Why should we do what we do? Why is anything important or meaningful? Why should we care about equality, inclusivity, climate change, mental health, vaccine equity, etc.? The focus should be on the right purpose so that pushes us all to create a win-win solution for self, the environment, and society. Right from the start, when we were young, why has been the leading way for people to do something? Most often, young kids remind us every day as of why is important. It has potential to give us all a reason to wake up in the morning and do something meaningful. They are fueled by core values and beliefs. Last year, during the start of the pandemic, we saw a simple initiative, PE with Joe Wicks, gave a reason to the kids and their parents to get up in the morning and start their day with a healthy routine. It gave people a reason. Researchers in my area have repeatedly shown that having a specific and concrete purpose is a great motivator for people and work. And meaningful purpose has potential for people and work to adapt to continue with the ripple of change. Two other questions that have been following the why question and how to do it and what to do. Only when we have clarity on the purpose, the right purpose, the future goals, leaders can create goal-targeted strategies for their teams. Purpose is so essential in the way people think about it. When you have a purpose, people see a meaning. The question is, how do we go about achieving that purpose itself? Given the transformation forced by the pandemic, the role of leadership has become more important than ever and will always have a critical role to address why the purposeful vision of their firm is important to do social good and create tangible social impact. Today, my fabulous team and I have planned this day very carefully, and we should love to all of you to join us to engage with the exceptionalist keynote speakers and panelists on the Zoom so that we interact. The sessions will be live on the YouTube as well, and I look forward to welcoming and hearing keynotes, panelists, and eye-to-eye challenge finalists as well. So before we start, some housekeeping rules before I invite my dean, my leader, Francisco Veloso, to the podium. If you're joining us on Zoom, we would request you all to keep your audio and video off unless you are scheduled to speak. All viewers, please use chat button to ask any questions to our panelists on Zoom or YouTube. At the end, we will have breakout rooms wherein we will give opportunity to all attendees to talk to our amazing social entrepreneurs who are competing for the Ideas to Impact Challenge itself. Okay, the moment we have been waiting for, let me invite my Dean, Francisco, to talk about business school and Imperial, what we are doing to create a future with a purpose-driven push, a motivation for us all. Before we see and hear from legendary Mr. Paul Polman as well. So, Francisco, over to you. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you. And I look forward to talking to you again soon as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sankalp. I assume you can hear me. Well, and thank you for that introduction, and welcome everybody to this wonderful day, and to the opportunity to celebrate social goods. And this is really important and critical for all of us, and it's very much at the heart of the strategy and the action of the business school. And this is something that I really like to share with you, and to connect it to what we're doing here today. So when we, the motto that's behind the strategy for the business school and our whole kind of drive into the future is this notion of leadership in a tech-driven world. And this connects to some of the points that Sankalp was making in terms of the way that we think about our role, our future, our contribution, and how it matters for us, and how it matters for what we do as a business school. So when we think about leadership in a tech-driven world, that has two senses that get into it. One is this notion of, through our research, through the intellectual side of what we do at the business school, the problems that we tackle, the issues that we look at, that we make sure that what we are doing is really trying to leverage what we understand on the power of technology to really, drive the world and to drive it to a better world. And fortunately, we've been having, a number of examples about how that works. And recently, we did some exercise for Research England about the impact of the business school. And, and this goes into as diverse issues as, for example, how can we use, geographic information and weather information to develop new microinsurance products to improve the life of the farmers in Africa, which is a project that we've been involved. How can we design better policies, to make sure that the way that electricity is produced and is used is really, bringing the best value to the populations, be it in England or around the world. Or, for example, when we think about, countries like India, and we think about how families around the country like India understand their finances and actually save and invest, to have better lives for their own families. How does that work, and what can we do differently in a place like this? For example, leveraging tools like fintech to actually improve, the way that, people around a huge country like India can understand finance and deploy the financial tools that the modern world allows, so that they can have themselves a better world. And I could continue on about the many examples of the kinds of things that we try to do at the business school through our research that can make a difference in the lives of many. The other aspect that's, of course, quite important is what we do with our students. When we think about leadership in a tech-driven world, it's about this intellectual leadership, but it's also about the fact that we have a responsibility to our students to prepare them to be leaders in these new environments and to be themselves a force for good. When I welcome the students to the business school, I always ask them to reflect a little bit on their journey now and their journey into the future in terms of how they're going to be contributing as leaders themselves to change the world into a better direction, and to use the time that they are at the business school to have that reflection and to feel that when they leave the school and to go back and re-engage with the business world or with nonprofits or with whatever is the direction that their lives take them, entrepreneurship and many others, that they're doing that in a way that they can drive change. And that's the second element of leadership, is to make sure that those that we touch that are themselves reflecting on how they can be this force for good. And in many ways, this last year has been amazing in reminding us on the power of technology and the responsibility that we have to drive that technology for good. We've had a terrible pandemic that has affected all of us and is why we're doing this digitally. At the same time, we've had science and technology through vaccination come to the rescue and really making a huge difference around the world on the places that's already being deployed, and hopefully around the world as the vaccines make it to many, many other billions of people around the world that, of course, will benefit from it. But at the same time, we're also seeing, for example, the negative parts of technology to disinformation, maluse of social media, and many other aspects. And so it really depends on us. It depends on how we take this responsibility and how we drive it forward. And that's why, celebrating these and reflecting on these through a social impact day that we have today is so important, because it's an opportunity to bring, what we do at the business school through our research, through our students or our education, but more importantly, to engage with all of you, to the broader community, the friends, those with good ideas, those that have the same drive to change the world, to come together and to celebrate the importance of what we do in a way that really has and drives social impact. And so that's why I'm really delighted to always come, to the Social Impact Day, to join today Sankalp and the rest of the team at the Gandhi Centre and many other friends and supporters to really be talking about these. And I think that the point that Sankalp made, which is the journey today about, the future of purpose, is really important, because that's, as he mentioned, what really keeps you thinking about why, as he mentioned. Why are you doing something? When we think about changing the world, we have to ask ourselves why. And purpose is really at the heart of this question. It's something that we've been exploring at the business school in a variety of ways, through the Gandhi Centre, but also through our Center for Responsible Leadership, to our Leonardo Center for Sustainable Development. This is very much present at the heart of the school in a variety of ways and in many different dimensions. And so I'd like to thank Sankalp and thank everybody at the Gandhi Centre, thank our speakers and our participants that are going to be joining us today in this wonderful journey, for joining us and to come reflect, think, celebrate, and later on with the awards, of course, in a very particular way, to celebrate the wonderful ideas and projects that many of you have been pushing forward and that we're very happy to celebrate today. And I guess the last part of my intervention today is really to invite, thank, and introduce our speaker, Paul Polman, which I'm delighted to do. And thank you very much for joining us. So Paul is a co-founder and the co-chair of Imagine, which is a social venture that mobilizes business leaders around the world to tackle some of these really difficult problems in the world, like climate change and global inequality. He's also the chair of a variety of firms and organizations, including the B Team, our friends up at Said Business School, the Valuable 500, and is also the honorary chair of the International Chamber of Commerce and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, as well as a vice chair of the UN Global Compact. And very important for our day today and for what we're celebrating, really a leading proponent of this notion that business can, and in many ways, or in every way actually, should be a force for good. Something that he very much pushed forward as the CEO of Unilever for 10 years, where he's really, paved the way for this multi-stakeholder approach to the way that business can and should be conducting themselves. And throughout his career, in many other ways. So I'm very much delighted that you accepted our invitation to be here today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sankalp, for the introduction, and I'm handing it over to you for your remarks.
No, thank you for your kind introduction. That's awfully nice of you. I'm actually not far from Imperial College, sitting here at home. I just flew from the US, so I have a 10-day quarantine. And I wish I could be there in person, because it's time that we have real hugs again. It's also good that you actually changed the name from Imperial College to Impact Challenge. So I like that. You can use your same initials, but be more effective. But look at it. You have 8,000 people on your staff. You have 170,000 students, 6,700 degrees every year, people from 125 countries. I think with that force that you represent, you can actually change the world. And that's why I'm so honored to talk to you. I wish I could stay a little bit longer for the Impact Challenge. There's some amazing projects there, but unfortunately I have to be in other meetings, and we'll definitely follow up on some of the ideas. I'll talk about that later. But this is exactly what we need, new and innovative ideas from the next generation, if you want to attack some of these world's biggest challenges, because it's all about impact right now. The world, frankly, is still too long on words and too short on actions. And what we need to do now is well known to everybody. I think the direction is clear, but we're simply not moving at the speed and at the scale that is needed. And this is a shame, because we've never been so forewarned now about things that are going to happen, and we've never been so forearmed with tools to actually do something about it. So the theme of your event, as I understand it, purpose-driven work, is a very meaningful and relevant theme that obviously we can go into a little bit deeper. I certainly hope that the tragedies of the COVID crisis, that we have actually turned that into an advantage and have had a little pause or reflection to think about the world we want and the role we want to play into creating this post-COVID world. And I hate to say, perhaps the post-COVID world might not exist. I think this is going to stay with us for a long time. But what are we going to do to ensure that we don't fall back to where we came from, because it clearly wasn't working at all? COVID has significantly impacted both lives and livelihoods. It's a health and economic crisis like no other we've seen. In fact, I was just Googling quickly before this call. We're now at 3.5 million deaths, and that's probably likely to be double if the real numbers will come out. Global GDP has declined last year by 3.3%. The World Bank estimates 150 million more people into extreme poverty, 500 million equivalent jobs lost, 20 to 30% of the small and medium-sized enterprises at risk of disappearing. It probably put us back on the Sustainable Development Goals, which I hope you're familiar with, probably put us back by 15 to 20 years. Now, besides $16 trillion spent on fiscal measures to stabilize and save lives and livelihoods, we have seen the global GDP decline by $22 trillion. These are numbers we'd never heard of before, but it shows what the cost of failure is. And we're at a point, I believe, that the combined cost of this failure is significantly higher than what it would cost us to prevent these issues in the first place. And it's clear that going through this again is not an option. It has made people feel vulnerable, made people feel afraid. Citizens are demanding more from governments, more from companies, more from other institutions. And if we don't respond to that, we risk further people in the streets, populism, nationalism, xenophobia. This risk of lack of social cohesion, if I may call it, is probably one of the biggest ones. So it is very clear that the current economic system is not sustainable, a high level of overconsumption, enormous levels of debt, leaving too many people behind. And you would agree with me that any system where too many people feel that they're not fully participating or being left behind, these systems will ultimately rebel against itself. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that more and more, even with people in the streets, despite COVID, but at the ballot boxes, the levels of dissatisfaction are increasingly transparent to most of us. I think we have discovered that we cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. And you would agree with me that anything we can do forever is by definition unsustainable, ultimately to the point of where the systems collapse. And here the systems are collapsing. We're actually, in many cases, like climate change, close to a negative feedback loop, if you want to. Now, COVID has exacerbated that risk and vulnerability that has been building in this global economy. It has shown us that we cannot have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. But there are also some positive things coming out of COVID. Despite the denial by some people, I think the ones that have followed science have done significantly better. So science, and to a certain extent, the values are being restored. I think there's also a broader realization how much our well-being actually depends on proactive governments, the social safety nets that had been put in place, the healthcare services that needed to be provided. I think we're also understanding as a result of COVID that human and planetary health are actually closely related. For the first time, people are seeing this complex interdependence of biodiversity, human health, inequality, climate change, with the tragic death of George Floyd, the racial dimension, etc. And finally, I would say a sense that things can be done quickly if we want to. This defeatism that everything takes a long time, that governments or systems cannot be moved. I think when it gets to crises like this, there's no reason why it couldn't be with the climate crisis. We can act fast, and we can act with a level of global solidarity. There is a renewed appreciation because of COVID that people understand that nobody is safe until everybody is safe. So what we saw in 2020, contrary to what people were expecting, we saw an acceleration of environmental, social, and governance. Companies that were operating under a multi-stakeholder longer-term model were doing better. They put in better performance. Not surprisingly, their employees more engaged, better relationships in their value chains, probably a more resilient buffer as a way of these companies operating, closer to real economies and being able to respond with a certain level of agility. We also saw that companies that have purpose at their core were doing better. Companies that understood that you have to move from CSR, what is corporate social responsibility, being less bad, managing risk, is not good enough anymore. You really have to move from CSR to what I call RSC, becoming a responsible social corporation. And then I believe that we've also seen, thanks to you all, that in 2020, that we have a new generation stepping up, a new generation of leaders as the old guard fades away, if you want to, that has certainly set the ambitions and significantly higher than we've seen before. So I like to look at 2020 as a turning point in the history of mankind, where we finally rise to the challenges to ensure that we get a more sustainable and equitable growth now and for generations to come. Nowhere is that clearer than on climate change. We've worked at very hard, and many of you have, but 18 months ago, about 25% of the world had a decarbonization plan. Now it's about 75%. We've seen corporates move. And if corporates don't move, we see the courts telling them to move. Look at Exxon now with their shareholder propositions. Look at Shell right now that is being forced into faster action by the courts. Governments themselves are moving. The UK will take the leadership this year of the G7. We have all the G7 countries making commitments to meet net zero by 2050, China 2060. We have the COP26 here, where we hope that they come in with stronger commitments for 2030, the European Green Deal, the Biden government's infrastructure. I could talk about that for an hour. But we also see employees stepping up. I've always said that in every country, in every company, there's a Greta Thunberg. We see employees not wanting to work for companies that are irresponsible, but also willing to walk out if demands are not met. And most importantly, we see the financial markets moving at a speed that we've never seen before. $70 trillion of money under management is now part of something called the Glasgow Financial Alliance of Net Zero, ensuring that their whole portfolios of money that they manage actually fulfills the net zero requirements. Yet we have a long way to go. Many still make commitments for 2050, frankly, knowing that they're not there. Many only talk scope 1 or 2, which is under their own control, not willing to take responsibilities of that total handprint in society. Too many companies still think you can outsource your value chain and also outsource your responsibilities. That doesn't happen anymore. So we do need to step up with a sense of urgency, and that is where you come in. We see the same on social, the S side from ESG. Climate could be the E side. The S side, obviously, with the tragic death of George Floyd, with the vulnerability that we have seen of COVID, again, affecting the poorer people who always pay the price against more than ever. The S side has been lifted up, both for corporates as well as for the investor community. And I'm actually pleased about that it has become the top priority for investors. We've seen now companies that compensate their families because of COVID, or provide healthcare services, or minimize wages, or support their communities. These companies are actually rewarded by the financial community. But at the same time, we also see enormous failures. In the US, the salaries of CEOs have increased at an incredible rate, whilst the poorest have lost money. The workers of this world have lost $3.7 trillion during COVID, whilst the billionaires of this world have made $3.9 trillion. Just that money of the billionaires would be enough to give everybody vaccines to ensure that the 800 million people that go to bed hungry every night, not knowing if they wake up the next day, get food, to put all the 240 million children that are not in school into education. So there is still something fundamentally wrong on the S side that we need to address. And if anything, COVID has made it worse, not better. And then obviously, I think the last thing to mention is that we've seen coming back on my ambitions and accountability, there is a movement into broadening the way that we measure success. You cannot just measure success by optimizing return on financial capital. If you don't always also include social and environmental capital, you won't get there. So the standard setting, the work of the IFRS with the Sustainable Standard Board, and some of the work on the SEC and other things to broaden the definitions of success to a health and well-being measure is obviously an important enabler that we need to have. Let me just go quickly into purpose, because that's also the topic that you will be addressing. I think the challenges we need to address very clearly are the pandemic and strengthening our healthcare systems. That will continue to be the number one priority. The number two priority is restoring growth and delivering the jobs of the future, especially for young people. The third priority is confronting this burning issue of inequality to foster this social cohesion, inclusion, and gender inequality or gender equality will be a big part of that. And the last one is to tackle this immense threat I talked about of climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental damage. Now, Mark Twain said there are two most important moments in your life: the day that you were born and the day that you found out why. Finding your purpose is absolutely key for all of us. Passion is actually pursuing your objectives, but purpose is actually putting yourself to the service of others. The moment you understand that putting the interest of others ahead of your own, and by doing so you're better off yourself as well, that's probably the moment that you found your purpose. It gives you courage. Courage comes from the French word cœur, which actually means heart. Courage, purpose, has to come from the heart as much as from the head. And if we listen to both of those with a high level of empathy, compassion, humility, humanity, then I think we become greater and greater leaders over time. It takes courage to understand that you don't have all the answers to respond to these enormous challenges. It takes courage to say, I work with others and expose myself and move in full respect with civil society, with governments. Not easy to do. It takes courage to set bold targets. Too many people still play not to lose versus playing to win. They know what is needed, yet their ambitions often are far removed to that. So there is a big opportunity to have more moral, more courageous leaders, if we want to drive this longer lasting change that we need. What I most focus on is the role of companies, because I believe that the bigger impact can come from the private sector and accelerating those companies to a higher level of business. And what you now find is that companies that think net positive, in fact, a book that I will bring out in September talking about how you move from being less bad, which is not good enough anymore, to becoming a regenerative or net positive company. World Overshoot Day last year was August 22nd, which means that we have, as of August 22nd, we used up all the resources that the world could replenish. So every day after, we're in fact stealing from our future generations. So net positive companies understand that. Net positive companies take ownership of that total impact in the world. They operate on the longer term for the full benefit of society. They create a positive return for all stakeholders, not just the shareholders. They pursue shareholder value as a result of what they do, not as a single-minded, myopic objective. And they partner to drive these broader systems changes. Colin Meyer, in his book Prosperity, talks about purpose as to profitably address the issues of planet and of planet and society. And that is really what all companies should be doing. If as a company you cannot show how you positively address the planet issues or societal issues, you have no reason to be there. And frankly, why should we as citizens of the world support these companies? So coming to the universities and coming specifically to Imperial College, you have an incredibly important role to play in this transformation, if I may. You have the opportunity to reimagine your own purpose, but also the role you're going to play to have a significantly broader impact. Undoubtedly, the curriculums from the business schools need to be broadened. We have created little Milton Friedman clones, if you want to. The social sciences need to come in. We need to create human beings, not spreadsheet machines that go single-mindedly after profit and shareholder value. We also need to have a broader feedback loop from the skills that you develop towards what the businesses need. We need to see universities become a bigger part of society, just like you're discussing today, to be measured as much by their impact and not hide behind academic freedom and books and little reports that frankly don't play a key role in society to change, and to actually be part of this broader partnership that I talked about. What I like about Imperial College, I've been there many times over my career and hope to come back again, is your Gandhi Centre is very good, but your Grantham Institute, talking about climate change, you now have a major grant for industrial decarbonization research, which I certainly would look forward to. And you have your innovation hub for climate finance and investment. And most importantly, what you're doing in the today, what brings you together, the impact challenge. And again, I have with my wife a foundation for blind children in Africa, the Kilimanjaro Blind Trust, that we set up to ensure that each and everybody gets access to education and can unlock their full potential in life. And I was very pleased to see that you have a smart cane project to improve mobility and for visually impaired people, that you look at electrifying with mini grids the rural areas to reach these communities. And we know how important that is to unlock the Sustainable Development Goals. From my time at P&G in one of my parts of my life, I'm glad that you're finally having a solution to reinvent the diaper business and make that more sustainable. So you are already showing that you're the leaders, not of tomorrow, but that you're the leaders of today, that you have a strong sense of purpose and realize that the self-interest and the common good are actually coming together, that you're guided by these longer term solutions, that you are able to work in collaboration, that you are putting the interest of others ahead of your own, that you are the systems thinkers that can think multi-generational, but more importantly, that you are possessing these qualities to help drive these the private sector and the governments to a higher level of moral responsibility to ensure that we have a better world for all. It was the Dalai Lama who said that if you seek enlightenment for yourself, simply to enhance yourself and your position, you miss the purpose. But if you seek enlightenment for yourself to enable you to serve others, you are actually with purpose. My simple message to you is lead a life with purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this inspiring presentation and discussion, and for challenging us as well, as you were saying, to make sure that we're putting these elements, front and center in our role as a business school. And I, Sankalp, and the rest of the team really do take that message very, very seriously. Thank you very much. And Sankalp, back to you.
Thank you, and see you hopefully soon in person.
Thank you, Paul. We look forward to seeing you as well. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Again, that was fascinating. Just a start, but kind of revitalizes the whole idea of purpose itself. Now we have another panel coming up with exceptional talent, speakers from different areas trying to talk about redefining purpose. It is something that is essential to redefine, revitalize, and talk about when you're thinking about what to do, right? That's the why question coming into play. So let me invite Honorary Gandhi Centre Fellow Simon to come introduce the panel, and let's have an interaction with them. If you have questions, please do make sure that you put it on the chat window. We're going to be following it. And thank you all panelists. I look forward to listening to you now. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Professor Sankalp. Thanks for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simone Ishikawa. I'm an honorary practice fellow here at the Imperial College Business School, as Professor Sankalp just introduced. I've written this, wonderful introduction, but I think I'm going to skip it now because I really want it to be a session for the panelists. And I'm very excited to introduce the group that we have today. So the topic of the discussion is going to be redefining purpose, but also what does purpose mean in the post-pandemic workplace, and how do we think of the future of the purpose-driven work and what that means for the workers as well as the companies. So we've got Dal Bamford, who is the Chief Customer Officer at the 10th Revolution Group. It's a next generation recruiting firm. Dal also carried the same title at Salesforce for years prior to this role, and is an avid fan of superhero. Hello, Dal.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I've also got Haider Imam, who is a contact of mine actually through a group called Unreasonable, a fantastic social impact platform. He is a founder, and I love his title, Director of Adventure of the Tao Leadership. It's a group that's transforming people, and it's a platform for behavior change that puts purpose at the center of what we all do. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing from him on what his company does. Hi there.
Hi, Simone. Hi, everyone.
And then we've got Purnima Luthra, who is the CEO of Talent Ed Consultancy and a recent author of a new book called Diversifying Diversity. Purnima and I had a really interesting discussion on diversity and inclusion prior to this call, and I'm very looking forward to hearing from Purnima. Hello.
Thanks, Simone. Hi, everyone.
And finally, we've got Kishab Murugesh, who is a group CEO of WNS Global Services, which is a company based in India and works with global players in its ecosystem. Hello, Kishab.
Hi there. Good to be here.
Hello. So wonderful to have all of you. I'm actually just going to dive straight into the questions. So pretty much, I'm going to start with you first. Congratulations on your book again. I'd love to hear more about it. In your work with the corporate boards and the management, how have your work in these places changed over the course of the pandemic? And how has the leadership qualities changed, and how are the corporates adapting to these changes and challenges?
Thanks, Simone. I think that's a really nice question, I think, to start with, right? Especially after listening to Paul as well. I think the pandemic has been an opportunity for us to pause and reflect. It's a bit of a reset button, if you'd like, and an opportunity, in some ways to really think about the kind of workplaces we want to create for the future, the kind of world we want to create for the future, really putting some of the things that Paul was talking about around purpose really at the forefront of how we choose to define workplaces into the future, and not just established institutions, but also thinking about young companies that are sprouting and coming up, right? And thinking about how do we embed purpose really at the heart of what we're doing as we move forward. So the way I look at this pandemic is it's been devastating, and at the same time it's also hopefully provided us an opportunity to really reflect and really take a good hard look at how things have been done in the past, and really question some of those things as we move forward. And of course, one of the areas that Paul talked about as well is around society and social improvement and equality, of course, at the heart of that. And so that's, of course, an area that's very dear to my heart, thinking about diversity and inclusion, and really moving, of course, gender is right up there on the agenda, and so is ethnicity and race, but really thinking about diversity in all its many facets, and really trying to embed inclusion into workplaces, and especially young organizations, embedding that at the very start of how they're created. So, the pandemic is an opportunity. And, what you said, the second part of your question around leadership, right? And thinking about those kind of, what are those qualities? And I guess through any crisis, leaders, of course, have to are shaken up, and they're required to hone some of those skills and perhaps that they didn't know they even had, but they're expected in some ways to rise to the challenge of leading their companies through a crisis situation. And in that process, I think there has been an emphasis on qualities of leadership that we otherwise perhaps didn't give enough attention to in the past. And so, talking about humane leadership, compassionate leadership, servant leadership, and leadership that's thinking about purpose and putting purpose at the heart of it. So some of these things are certainly coming up into the forefront right now, and that's really wonderful to see. But my hope is, of course, that this doesn't become one of those things that we take this kind of 2 years to think about it and it's all forgotten and we go back to the way things were done before.
Wonderful. That's actually good to think about the different sizes of the companies, the birth of these systems, and how they begin to look at things and how they structure themselves. And actually, that paves our way well into the question for Keshav, actually. So, Keshav, of course, you've been running a big organization in India with global players in your ecosystem for a while. How are you looking to leverage the pandemic ways of working going forward at your company? I'm sure it was quite a shock to everyone, and probably continues to be. But also, which parts of untapped talent or productivity are you the most excited to be able to tap into? And have you had any early successes that you can share?
Sure. So Simon, first of all, great to be here. And I sincerely apologize that I don't have that wonderful background that the others have. It looks like I missed something. But I must tell you, WNS as a company is about 43,000 people globally. And we operate from 16 countries, 61 development centers. And therefore, when COVID-19 hit us in March of 2020, it really was a huge supernova 2x moment for us, because nobody, in our business, we prepare for what we call business continuity planning, but who actually prepares for a pandemic continuity planning that hits every country at the same time, that hits every client at the same times, and actually hits every human being at the same time. So I must say that, we actually performed very admirably, because in our business, what we do is really to provide certainty to clients. It is our job to make sure that we are ensuring that critical, rather mission critical business of clients is running. And there was no way we could go to any of our clients anywhere in the globe and say that, we're facing this pandemic and therefore you have to shut down your business because we can't run ours. We moved overnight. We collaborated closely with governments across the globe. I'll focus on India because the topic was really India, but we focused very closely with the industry associations like NASSCOM and the others, with the Indian government. We very quickly, in a week's time, moved people from the hub, which is essentially offices, to a model that had never been tested before, which is working from home. We moved all IT support measures to home. We actually worked with governments to ensure that we were declared an essential service, without which companies across the globe, businesses across the globe, hospitals and airlines across the globe would not have been able to operate. And I think it was understood very quickly. There was a very close handshake between government and industry that happened. And fast forward a few months, while maintaining the trifecta, which is essentially ensuring that we never compromise on the health and safety of our employees, we also made sure that the lights were kept on for every one of our clients. And more importantly, we kept planning for the next pandemic, or the next wave, so to speak, based on the learnings of the 2020 wave. And I must say that work from office became work from home, and now it's actually work from anywhere. From a WNS point of view, what we did was we implemented a hub, spoke, and an edge model from a physical operations point of view, where the edge is really home, the hub is the traditional office, and the spoke is something that we created in between, so people could interact with each other and feel that they were still part of the overall operation. The second thing is we introduced significant amounts of intelligent technology and automation, as well as platforms that enable our employees now working from home to interact with each other, perform appraisals, and be able to clarify or confirm what was actually happening in their workspace, how they were actually delivering. And we created completely new models of engagement, I would say. We have dramatically changed our skilling programs, as a result of which a lot of it is platform-led, automation-led. So skilling and upskilling is driven by that. We have democratized our kind of decision-making model, flattened all structures, as a result of which socially it is much easier for people now working from homes to actually take decisions quickly. And we've actually found that the trust levels have actually increased much more, and decisions are taken much faster. Clients actually love this model, right? And let's look at, therefore, what is the most interesting or exciting opportunity from our perspective. What we have done based on the learnings of 2020 is work with the government of India to completely change laws relating to work from anywhere and work from home, as a result of which we believe we can take this business into the tier 3 and the tier 4 locations of India and create jobs, in those locations. And that's very exciting. We actually think that by driving this tier 2, tier 3 momentum, and also making sure that we can create part-time employment, it will enable the gig economy to take off, and it'll enable smart people across different business lines to start getting engaged in this business wherever they may be. More importantly, it will allow them to work across different companies, maybe earn higher levels of compensation as well. Very importantly, what part-time employment will now enable for us is it will unlock the 110 million women in India who have a secondary education degree, but who are not part of any workforce because part-time employment has not generally been allowed till now. So I'm super excited because we have actually kept the lights on for our clients. Clients love the model, the way we have executed for them. We have operated extremely well from an operational risk and a cybersecurity risk point of view. And anyone across the globe who has not tested the model is now saying, I want this model. I want to grow with companies like WNS and the sector. And we believe that by unlocking this new talent force inside, the growth will be met extremely well.
That's fantastic. It's so good to hear that that you're you managed to utilize the women in the workforce and all the other great things that's happened. I think it's easy to think about the downside of what the pandemic has done for us, but I think the positives are also very much there. And I think definitely great to hear your story on how you're leveraging those. And actually, on that front, Dal, I mean, you've joined your company during the pandemic, and I really want to ask your personal point of view on how that onboarding was for you, and which part was particularly challenging versus easy, and how would you envision the same experience would be like if there was someone just out of school, Gen Z, starting out in a new company, and what can they expect from the job market, and what would you advise them?
Oh, so many questions, Simone, packed into one. So I'll try and take one by one. So my personal experience in joining is I'm very lucky. I mean, like Keshav was saying, a lot of companies overnight flipped their models and enabled technology that they might not have had in organizations before. So the collaboration platforms were in place by the time I joined. So in terms of collaborating and, interacting with people, from that element, it was absolutely fine. The technology was in place to enable it. What I would say the challenges are, as I look back now, I'm coming up to a year, I would say that my onboarding took a lot longer. There is a lot to be said around when you think about in-person interaction, those water cooler conversations that happen. Just last week, we've reopened our offices in London. We've been open on and off throughout as a result and ask from our employees and in various locations around the world. And it just happened to be that all of the leadership team were in, socially distanced, obviously, with the right checks and balances in place. But suddenly conversations and meetings that weren't in my diary took place. 2 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Which project are you talking about? And they're the hidden conversations that get lost. And I think anybody else join, and I was very fortunate. I've joined a company that's got a lot of investment in technology and has a very inclusive culture. Everybody was very opening, very warm. People would put time in my diary to make sure I was getting on okay, all of these checks and balances. But it did take me, I would say, at least 3 months longer to onboard at my level than I would have expected. And I think as I look to sort of a Gen Z or a Gen Z and the younger workforce coming through now, I think a lot of thought has to be given. A lot of companies flipped to remote and we already knew each other. We knew our colleagues, we knew our teams, we'd already maybe done years or months of interaction. What does that look and feel like when it's new people coming in? What does that collaboration, that employee engagement, onboarding experience look like? Because it can, I would imagine, be quite lonely, especially if that's your first workforce entry. In terms of the job market and what does it look like? And I'm sure, Keshav, you can probably talk to this as well because we work in a similar industry. The tech world, it continued to bubble along in COVID. The tech vendors continue to do quite well. They continue to see 30% year-on-year growth overall when you look at the big cloud technology vendors, which means that the customers were still purchasing technology. What we have seen in the last 3 to 4 months globally, however, is a shift and demand in talent that we have not seen before. So people are moving jobs, locations, industries in ways that they have never done before. And companies, there is now a lot of pent-up demand. Projects that were maybe put on hold during COVID have now come out in force. There is now such demand from the market that there is not the talent to meet it, especially as you look at experienced talent. So that's driving some very interesting economies as you look at this from a worldwide talent perspective. So my advice on Gen Z coming into the market is the jobs are there, the talent is needed from companies, but what companies are looking for is experienced talent. So the critical part of advice, if this was my children coming through, they're a bit young yet to be Gen Z, but if they were coming through right now, I would be saying to them, how do you get that first hands-on experience? What are you doing right now over and above whatever university education you might have taken to show that you have done some degree of online learning or engage with the technology? A lot of the vendors put a lot of online certifications out there. Getting onto that first platform and experience and landing that first role is critical. Learn, be open to learning. And the other thing I will say is that whilst the talent demand is there, be very, very pragmatic with your expectations about what salaries look like. We talk a lot about purpose. And purpose is very important, and values and vision and the leadership team articulating that and making the employees feel engaged is critical. But as you come through as a Gen Z, you're new to this world. So equally with that vision and purpose and you want to set the world on fire, skill up, get that experience under your belt, get your head down, take your trails or your certifications, especially in the tech world, and learn and balance your expectations of what you are expecting within the job market is, you know, pragmatically is what I would say to that younger generation. I think I covered them all, Simone.
That's a really good practical advice from you. It's not you know, it's not get fired up. It's actually, yeah, do those things. And you know, there's tons of these companies offering this. I mean, your old employer, Salesforce has Trailblazer courses on offer. That's, you know, a lot of it yeah, for free, and Google does too. So you know, really, there's no excuse. It's an open learning sources that's all out there that gives you.
Absolutely. And, you know, and volunteer for non-for-profits. Get that, you know, show your hunger, show your appetite for learning. Then get into a business and align yourself. You like architects, software development, align yourself to somebody smart and learn. Get stuck in.
Wonderful. And actually, yeah, thank you so much for that. And you know, and this actually leads really nicely into Haider and his company. You know, I was really fascinated to hear about Tao leadership. I think, you know, I probably could spend a long time trying to understand the ins and outs and the details of how you're doing it. But, you know, I've heard that you've done years of, you know, consulting, kind of understanding your client base, and that shaped your product vision at Tao. How, in your opinion, and in the HR tech space, how do you envision the teams thriving in a distributed workforce where you know, tech empowered and people are in different places and therefore, you know, culturally diverse? How would you say the past year has differentiated the leaders from the laggards, and you know, which of the HR techs that you've seen have been the most impactful? But you know, perhaps let's hear from you on how the Tao technology works.
Thanks, Simone. Well, it's really interesting that, Dal, you spoke about the hidden conversations. You made reference to that, to the joy of the water cooler and just being able to rock up to a shared kitchen or a shared, you know, restaurant and have a coffee together. And of course, that's not been really happening over the last 15 months. And we know from our work, but also from 20, 30 years of social science research, that the way work gets done in larger organizations is not the hierarchy. It doesn't look like an org chart when you look at it. It's this very messy, interconnected, constantly evolving and moving set of informal networks based on relationships that are fundamentally around trust, around integrity, around energy, positive energy, and around frequency. Like, who do you sit next to? You're probably more likely to email someone who sits 3 feet away from you when you're back in the normal workplace than you are someone across the other side of the world. So we communicate more with people who are near us. So we all have our own networks of people that we go to get things done. And that's been our focus for the last number of years, is how do we, first of all, how do we understand that? How do we visualize it? And then how do we leverage that to create behavior change and culture change really quickly? So instead of a year or 2 or 3 years, we do it in 12 weeks with kind of large global clients. And it's through leveraging the influencers, as we call them, that we find out through the technological analysis. Who are they? How can we learn from them? How can we do that? So that's very, very different now in a remote environment. And I think what we've seen is the data's been quite clear, is that all of these wonderful networks that we've had over the years have shrunk really quickly. And so we spend a lot more time talking to a smaller group of people, but we have far less of those what would be called weaker ties, those connections that we spend less time with, a lot less of that, which means I think it probably correlates to seeing a lot of engagement results have gone up for companies over the last 12 months, which is, I think, surprised a lot of us. But when this cohesion, this tightness predicts engagement. So we've seen a lot of network shrinking and feeling really engaged with each other, but then it's not good news for inclusion. It's not good news for innovation, for these things where you spontaneously, you know, bump into someone else, have a conversation, and that sparks an idea or a new meeting. So the short term is great for productivity, and I think we've seen that. For a lot of companies, productivity is gone up because cohesion is tighter and people execute better. Innovation is I think we're going to have an innovation problem in a year's time when we start seeing the effects from that. And inclusion, it's not great for. I think in terms of making it work, I mean, you know, who am I to say? We're a small company of maybe 10 to 20 people in all, but what we're seeing, I think, is that it's some of the same stuff upgraded. So the stuff that we've always needed in teams, we need psychological safety, but we need trust. We need to be able to have clarity around what is the role, what is the structure, what role do I play in this, that I can count on my colleagues to do really great quality work on time, and that we get some sense of meaning from the work that we're doing. So that's always been the case. But I think now what we're seeing is that we need to have a higher touch style of leadership. So leaders need to be much more emotionally intelligent, much more empathetic, more compassionate, more understanding, and be checking in more frequently for shorter amounts of time with their people. But also, I think probably the idea, some of the things that we do, for example, we're big on rituals in our team. So at Monday, 9:30, every Monday, we all get together as a team. We start the week with a check-in around gratitude and expectations. What are we grateful for? What are we hoping for the week? We finish the week at 3:30 on a Friday with, what are we proud of that we've done, and who are our shout outs in the team? So really focusing on those connections, start the week, end the week with connection in mind, but then also some surprises. You've got to have more surprises now. So the work can be quite monotonous nowadays when you're working in more isolation. So it's that really putting ritual in there, but also really putting surprise and fun in there. So I think it's a call to action for leaders to be much more high touch. And I think the part of what we're having to work with now is people really. I think the statistics are huge about people. I think it's 40% of people are looking to change their job as they come out of the pandemic. So they're questioning their own purpose. And I think that's huge. So there are some great solutions out there. We need to start looking at how do we reskill people dramatically, from being someone who works, machinery at a building site to becoming an AI developer. I mean, it's those kind of transitions that we're having to look at. And there are some great companies out there, like Skyhive is one that I know very well, that are looking at how do we radically transform 200,000 people in an organization to get a brand new set of skills. So I think a lot of people are finding it interesting, finding it challenging, questioning their purpose. Again, I think organizations really need to understand the informal lay of the land, the latent talents that they have, and have a plan on how do we reskill them for the future without losing them.
Fascinating. I think this talent debate, I mean, you said 40% are looking to change jobs. I think, it's going to be such a big difference. And I think, corporates, especially when they feel that their public messaging or branding, hasn't landed very well, the abilities to be able to attract top talent just continues to hurt, I think, in many ways, which is a fascinating topic. And actually, so on that point, and I'm going to touch on the inclusion, or the, I guess, uninclusive that we've become in the pandemic, as Haider said. So Purnima, it's a question for you. We hear very frequently that the pandemic has set back the working women for years, and pay gap is at its record, and it's been a very painful few headlines for me, at least personally, as a women advocate. And on top of that, I mean, Paul Polman has mentioned this briefly as well. We've seen some radical movements during the pandemic across the societies, from George Floyd to hashtag Stop Asian Hate, mainly in the U.S. and UK context. But why did this happen? And why did the workplace equality or inequality crumble during COVID?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think many of us have been, trying to sit back and think about why is this happening right now? The simple answer to that is that it's always been there, right? Inequality is unfortunately, even in 2021, we're still confronting inequality that we've been confronting for decades. And we're, in some ways, in some sectors, we're not moving forward. In others, we're seeing marginal improvements, but the pandemic has certainly set us back, especially with gender, right? And we've seen disproportionate groups, women, for example, who have been impacted by the pandemic. We've also seen in other sectors, looking at education, the inequality that exists in terms of quality and access to education as well. And it's always been there. The difference is that the pandemic has brought it to light, right? It's highlighted this undertones of gender bias and sexism and racism and all of those things to the surface because of the pandemic itself, but also Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate, and the resurgence of the Me Too movement in some parts of the world. So it's not that it wasn't there before, but it's just that it's been brought up to light, to the surface, because of unfortunate situations, and that's something that in some ways we need to really address, and we've got to really ask ourselves this question. We're sitting here in 2021 still dealing with some of these things. Why is that? Why have we not been able to move forward as a human society in ensuring that some of these things are in place? So we've been struggling with it for so long, and this is really one of those things that leaders need to ask themselves, whether they're leaders, as I said earlier, of large organizations, and certainly corporates need to be leading the way, setting the example. But it's also about how do we ensure that the value of inclusion, which both Heather and Dal have talked about, is really embedded at the outset of the new companies that are coming up, so that we're not facing this problem yet again into the future. And when we look at inequality, I think it's also really important for us to look at it holistically, right? That's one of the main drivers for me writing the book that I have. If we put gender on the table, we seem to lose the support of men. If we put minority ethnic groups, we seem to lose the support, or the majority are not really invested in it. So we've got to find a new way, a radical way of saying that actually inclusion is for everyone. Yes, and it's about those water cooler talks, it's about those sparking conversations, but it's really about that sense of belonging. How can I show up in my workplace with my whole diversity thumbprint, whether it's gender, ethnicity, age, sexual identity, socioeconomic background, university education or not, physical abilities, disabilities, neurodiversity. There's a whole list of different dimensions that actually encompass this idea of me feeling like I can bring my whole diverse self into the workplace. And that's where we need to be. And for far too long, we've been putting up with groups within the organization who have faced discrimination, bias, and have left a part of themselves outside. And I'm sure that all of us on this call can identify with that, where we've either experienced it ourselves or we've certainly witnessed it with other people. And that's something that we've got to really think about. And both Dal and Haider, of course, talked about this, and this very idea that we need to be able to, we're human, as human beings, we thrive on social connections. And that's one thing that we've really realized that we're missing. Even the most perhaps introverted of us has realized that there's some social connections that are essential to our well-being, to us feeling engaged with the workplace, with leadership, with our colleagues, with people that we work with more generally, with clients. And that's something that we've really got to take a hard look at, that moving forward, that we put this really at the heart of it, right? That inclusion is about ensuring that we're able to bring our whole selves in, that we're creating organizations where we all can dance. Verna Meyer's wonderful quotation, right? That we can all dance in the workplace, right? And diversity is, of course, being invited to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. So how comfortable do we all feel in the workplace? And how can we ensure that, startups and companies are really embedding this at the outset, so that we're not left with the situation we're in right now, scrambling and trying to reverse what should have been the right thing to do in the very first place. And we're righting the wrongs of the past, but we've also got to redefine the future of what inclusion looks like. And I'd really encourage, I think, all of us to take a hard look at that as a holistic construct, and not just one where we're focusing on one area or another at any point in time, but really looking at all of it constructively and holistically. So that's my dream, and that's why I wrote Diversifying Diversity. Just one more thing that I wanted to say is that, you asked me this question earlier as well around leadership, right? And what are leaders how have they responded to this? I think it's been a wake-up call. That's the start of it. I think the interest in diversity and inclusion, along with, of course, climate change, is certainly there, and the thirst is far more than I've ever seen it before, and that's fantastic, right? That's absolutely the way we expect it to be, want it to be, so that we're defining those workplaces of the future, and so there's hope in some ways that we're able to see that change manifest itself, and hopefully the change happens. But we really, I mean, it's 2021, you know. Something's got to change, and it's got to change fast. And we certainly, you know, Dal, the question that was posed to you around Gen Z, my book is dedicated to my young boys, who are, one is Gen Z and one is Gen Alpha, so that the workplaces that they enter are certainly going to be very different, to my nieces as well, you know, that, come on, we've got to do things differently, so that we're not, you know, 30 years down the road, hearing our children still talking about the very same acts of discrimination and bias that exist in society today. And that comes from that purpose. And we've got to put this particular purpose, and climate change, of course, right high up there on the agenda.
Thanks, Purnima. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm a mother of 3 kids as well. And I think, you know, if you're in that situation and your job requires you to be there and can't accommodate you on a remote way or flexibly, then it's really easy to imagine how that can be just a, you know, drop in earnings and drop in you know, the job altogether. It's a, you know, you and then during the pandemic, the school shut, and, you know, of course, then the moms are basically teachers, and you know, even when the school starts opening, it's, you know, 2 days, and, you know, so what, you're going to try to look for 2 days, but then the other days you have to go do a pickup at 3 o'clock and whatever it is. So I think it's the change in the mindset that kind of comes to the fore of this. So thanks for pointing that out. I think, yeah, Dal, I mean, on that point, so your new company, 10th Revolution, is kind of a disruptive force in the recruiting industry. How are you looking at, let's say, the gig economy, but also, you know, what are you telling your clients about attracting, retaining talent? You know, I think it'd be really good and interesting to hear your thoughts on new considerations for the post-pandemic talent landscape.
So I think a few things. I think it's already been touched on by Keshav and actually everyone on the call, on the panel, around this notion of skilling and reskilling. So we're seeing a few things from our clients. So there are a few arms to the 10th Revolution business. There's the core recruitment arm, which has been going for years in the core recruitment. But there's a newer business to the arm called Revelant, which is this, you know, reskilling and placing of diverse talent into the ecosystem. And that area is sort of really exploding. So what we're partnering with our customers to talk about is, well, like I said, there's been an explosion for experience demand. Okay, and there is no getting around that. People are just going to want the professionals who are skilled already, architects, developers in that software stack. However, what we're talking to talent customers about is, what does that talent pipeline planning look like? Fine, you have your requirements today, but 12 to 18 months out, how are you bringing in net new talent, reskilling, upskilling, pulling them in from diverse backgrounds? We're looking at socioeconomic, BAME, as much as obviously I don't personally like the term, but we still use it because the UK government still uses it. You know, all of these different backgrounds, gender, obviously, you know, how are you diversifying that talent pipeline and bringing them in? And how are we moving people through this hurdle of reskilling and upskilling? And I think in terms of talent attraction, it's a really, really interesting market at the moment. For all of us sitting here saying, well, it's really interesting, everybody's gone straight to remote, we're actually seeing an interesting inflection in the market where companies are still sort of putting contracts out there quite extensively saying, well, we actually want the option at one point to return to full-time to the office. So it's really interesting. Everybody says, oh, we're going to a hybrid model, fully hybrid model, or we're going to a fully working from home model. But what we still see from clients in terms of when we touch on this concept of innovation and teams, trust, and building really carefully, is that clients are still really looking for people to be on site. And so we've got this really interesting inflection where companies are sort of saying it, and then you've got candidates going, well, maybe we will go for the companies that are just offering remote and hybrid from the get-go. So we see this really interesting flux in the market. And so we're working with a lot of our customers to say, you're going to have to change your hiring requirements in this market slightly. The things that were prerequisites before, it's a candidate-driven market right now, get more flexible. And look at what else it is that you can put around that role, that it's going to make you the more experienced or the more the company, the destination company. And the final thing that I would say that I would note in the market is the talent wants to join interesting companies that are innovating on tech. So get that message out there. You know, if you're doing something really cool with tech, it's not salaries they're necessarily looking at, they're looking to upskill and work on the coolest projects in the market. So that's the sort of the tuppence worth. I hope that's answered it. I'm very mindful of time. Answered that okay?
Thank you so much. No, it's actually, it's refreshing hearing that. I've read an article somewhere that said all the benefits of bringing people back to work is actually social. I think there's one reason, and that was special equipment. So I guess if you're a studio person or a photographer or something, yeah, of course you need that huge screen that you can, you know, analyze whatever. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I think there's a massive benefit to the physical the side of things. And of course, you know, people who are used to it, we all kind of fall under that, miss it. So actually on that front, so, you know, my old industry, which is banking, and a lot of the companies and all my old employers actually have been coming out and saying that they want everyone physically back and as soon as possible. And this is the, you know, the kind of passing thing, and it's not going to stay. And one of the other things that they do is actually workforce surveillance, which, you know, if you ask anyone else outside the industry, they all go, what? Like, that just sounds so wrong. And you know, Haider, I mean, for you and the person who's at the forefront of the HR tech, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I've seen, you know, banks kind of spin it out to say that we use it to monitor the worker behavior to minimize burnouts and, you know, and to make sure that people aren't working around the clock and what have you. So yeah, there are pros and cons to the use of this technology, but would love to hear your thoughts.
These things they're tools, aren't they? And what makes the difference is the human thinking and the decision and the intention of the decision, the integrity of the decision behind the tool. So tools are great. You can do anything with them. You can write a wonderful poem with a pencil, but you can also stab someone with a pencil at the same time. So it's about how it's the integrity with which you use these things. I mean, work is hard enough. We're working 10 to 20% longer every day than we were before, but more and more of us are feeling burnt out because the home is the office. You know, the kitchen table is the office. And to have someone monitoring our keystrokes and taking photos through our work PC every 15 minutes to make sure we're sat there with our kids in the background, their images being uploaded without their permission. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's a huge breach of trust. And we know that employees, generally 9 out of 10 employees, are really happy to give their work data to be used by organizations as long as it's transparent, it's managed safely, and they get some benefit in return. You know, you have cultures like Netflix who pride themselves on freedom and responsibility and say, look, well, if you finish your outcomes by, you know, in the first hour of the day, take the rest of the day off. We're interested not in making sure that you are sitting there for 8 contracted hours, but we're interested in the outcomes that we're paying you for. And I think we're seeing more of a gradual shift towards that. I mean, there was a crash, maybe shouldn't name names, but last year Barclays were in the news for monitoring keystrokes. And you've got to know if you're a company that and you're using these type of micromanaging, invasive approaches, it's going to backfire. I mean, in terms of employees staging protests, in terms of engagement levels dropping, productivity dropping, we just see it again and again and again. So it's never really a good idea. Well, we also know that the companies that when employees now are making decisions that the what would we say, the ethical drivers are 3 times more important in their engagement satisfaction than the activities themselves. So we're talking about purpose, of course. We're talking about integrity and we're talking about reliability, consistency. These things are really important to us as employees, and I think, you know, the companies that will thrive in the future are the ones that put that at the center: ethics, transparency, human kindness, all of these things over micromanaging and making sure that people have punched in, punched out at the right times all day long.
Timesheets, yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that insight. And look, it's been fantastic session, super insightful to hear from all of you. And actually, to wrap this up, I'd like to ask you, Keshav, about the very fascinating conversation you and I had about East versus West in transition to the post-COVID back to work readiness. Because we're seeing a lot of people in the West being more and more vaccinated and adapting and opening up, whereas, you know, now India and parts of Eastern countries, I think I've recently heard Philippines facing 2nd or 3rd waves and or vaccine lateness or shortages. How are you looking to bridge this gap and addressing this at WNS?
Sure. So Simone, first of all, I must say that the comments from all our panelists have been fascinating, and irrespective of size and scale of company and things like that, I can tell you that every one of these comments are what all of us are discussing today in terms of a post-pandemic world, because life is going to be totally different. We're all looking at what will employees now look for when they look to take employment or join a company. And we are lucky because in our business, our sector is benefited by large scale. Just for your information, India has 4.5 million people engaged in this business. So last year, when I helped to move desktops to people's homes in 1 week, we moved 4.5 million desktops. It was not just the WNS desktops. At that point in time, I was also the chairman of NASCOM. So I had to make sure the whole of India came back with fire, so to speak. So that's the scale. When you look at diversity, while we are focused on diversity across all measures, in terms of just women employment, close to 50% of our employees are women. Our focus is therefore, how do we ensure that more leaders emerge? So within the company, I have a program called Project Centurion, which is all about how do we get 100 new senior women to emerge as leaders at this company. We have another project called the Millennial Project, where millennials actually work with me in terms of advising me and my team in terms of what are requirements of the future and how we should keep changing our policies. Now, we definitely last year itself said, while we had performed very admirably as a sector and as a company and built a lot of confidence and comfort with our clients, we predicted that the vaccination progress would be difficult. And because of the scale of India and some of the countries you mentioned, we actually felt that the West would probably come back faster. And therefore, we needed to prepare extremely well for potential second as well as a third wave. And therefore, we did a lot of that. So while in wave one, we were much more focused on ensuring that testing and tracing was done and things like that. Today, it is all about how do we ensure, in addition to that we are actually creating vaccination programs in our campuses and making sure that not just our employees, but all the dependents actually can get vaccinated in short order at the cost of the company. So that's one. The second thing is we're also very, very concerned about why employees of the future will choose certain companies and not the others. I actually believe, while WNS has always been a company with a soul, I think that is going to be the most important criteria of why talent will gravitate towards certain companies. Will they look for companies that actually have an I take care attitude first, and along with that, allow them to actually learn, get a breadth of experience, and really travel the world and things like that, and also drive their aspirations around innovation. So I think these are the key areas we are focused on. So at this point in time, one of the big changes that we made was, while we are the leaders in terms of benefits for our employees, we dramatically changed everything maybe 2 weeks ago and added a lot more of incentives, as a result of which employees are really positive about what we have done on employee care, on hospital care, on home care relating to COVID, even before they go into a hospital, what we have done around insurance, what we are doing about families impacted, things like that. And I think these are all positive steps that we have been taking all through. I must say that while all of this has been happening, it has given a lot of confidence internally to our employees who are now expecting to come back to work, because we are also very clear, while different companies have different models, at WNS, we believe the only way to drive the culture we have and to foster innovation is to try and get as many people back to the office as quickly as possible. So we are very much focused there. But overall, I will say that finally, people look for companies that have a soul. And I must say that during this crisis, people watched how WNS and WNS Cares Foundation, which is our CSR arm, actually worked with the community in terms of, for example, we took the lead in the state of Maharashtra, along with 40 other companies, to actually donate oxygen concentrators, plants, remote ICU bed management systems, things like that. And I mean, just think of it. I mean, wouldn't you want your kids to work with, companies that, look at life like that? And while doing all of this, extend their influence and earn a decent revenue growth and profit. And I can tell you, WNS has actually gone into the market this year, in spite of COVID, providing the industry's highest growth rate in terms of guidance, 10% at the midpoint of the range. And I believe that Indian IT is now ready to rise. And I use the anagram carefully. Rise for me is resilience, intellect, scale, and entrepreneurial power. The combination of all of this, as seen across the years, as well as during COVID, and the steps we're taking even now for tier 2, for wave 2 and wave 3, means that we believe that we are expecting to see a lot of growth, lots of new employment being created, and lots more of excitement in the market.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Keshav. And thank you so much to all the panelists today for joining. We're running, of course, a bit late. Thank you very much for your contribution. It's been a fascinating conversation. I'm also very honored to introduce you Tom Cummings. He should be here. Tom, hello. Can I see Tom?
Yep, I'm here. Hello.
You're here.
Great to see you.
Wonderful to see you. Just really quickly to introduce you, you do have your full 10 minutes. Sorry, we're running late today. Tom has been a fantastic entrepreneurship advisor. He's worked at 3 large companies, but not only that, he's then stepped out and become an advisor, board member with regards to the entrepreneurs, but also done academia. So he's got the 3 different balls that he's juggling really well. And, I do like to emphasize that he's had a long relationship with his clients in the companies that he's worked with. And he is definitely a person whose pride it is to nurture the next generation leaders. So thank you, Tom, so much for joining us to speak to us. And we're very lucky to have you, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Wonderful to actually not see anybody. I'm here on the screen, but I get to interact with you, and I get to see Simone and our other speakers. First of all, I'm very delighted to be able to share a little bit of what I know with Imperial College Business School and the distinguished Gandhi Centre for Inclusive Innovation. When I was considering what to say in my 10 minutes, I was reflecting on Gandhi in London, and it was striking to me how, in a funny way, he came to London because he felt he was quite a failure, and he was intending to study law, of course, and he did study law, but his passion was creating and cultivating the Vegetarian Society of Greater London. And I felt like this was actually a sign to me that whatever else you do in your work and the job that you have, first of all, you're much bigger than the job you have. And that you have your projects in your job and you have your projects in your life. And those who know me would say I'm rather iconoclastic about jobs, because my perspective is that, in a way, when I'm counseling young leaders, I say, go work with great people, go find great projects that resonate with your life. And we heard from the previous speakers a little bit about why that's important. And so that is, in fact, my starting point, really, to talk about leaders. And I think one of the things that is so important in my experience of engaging with next generation leaders is that I can see the world through their eyes. And I think this is a quality that you want to cultivate. None of us easily has the answers. You have people who have really come up with fantastic systems, methods, and approaches. But what matters is that you have the guts and the heart at this stage and age to be able to step into your life, essentially. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, it's not about heroics. It's about really the long mile and or the long kilometer, depending on where you come from, and really understanding that whatever you do, you are going to have chapters in your life. And in those chapters, you're going to have the possibility to step in and explore specific aspects of yourself, because that's why we're here on Earth. We're here on Earth to ask the question, why are we here? And try to answer that and ask the question, well, what are we supposed to be doing? And the greatest leaders that I have encountered over my life, and I have seen and had the privilege of seeing many, they're the ones that say, well, I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm going to step into this. You know, the head of Compass Group, a $500 million, 500,000 person catering company. They're actually now in the tens of billions. The question that their CEO asked at the time that I was working with him is, why aren't I just as good as any other person who's sitting on a board right now? And he did this when he was 22, and he was the chef working in the Midlands kitchen of the Ford Motor Company. So he would serve the board members, and he thought, well, they're no better than I am. And in fact, what's challenging now is that we step into a world where, as my friend Paul Gilding likes to say, is going through the great disruption. And in fact, as we go through this great disruption, in fact, he hadn't anticipated in his book very much the pandemic. What we start to see that as we go through a disruption, there's a next stage, and it's the great dismantling. So we're really starting to dismantle the old and start to take on the new. And this is what I find curious about the pandemic, because people talk about post-pandemic, and I'd rather talk about pre-transformation. You are in the pre-transformation stage. So the system you're in, and many of you may feel cheated this last year, having to sit in your bedroom and do your work for university or for business. We're in this pre-transformation phase, and we have to understand the system that we're in and grapple with that. Once we understand that, we have to ask the question, with whom are we in relationship? And I'm not saying connecting in the sense of LinkedIn, but I'm saying, who really are we in relationship, and can we get in relationship with? Because being in relationship with other people, understanding the context, are the essential ingredients of becoming. And if we can see our lives as really leaders who are becoming, because we're all leaders, in a certain sense, a leader is somebody who thinks, gee, there just must be a different way to do this. If you've ever asked that question, you know, you step into the realm of leadership. So if we can understand that in this becoming process, we start to notice where we can play to our strengths. And playing to our strengths is essential, because school spent the entire time showing us our gaps, showing us what we weren't good at. And we spent all our time, losing our confidence, thinking, I'm not good enough, when we've got to pivot in work life and say, actually, there's some things I'm really good at. And how do we find the ways that we get good at those things? I'm going to share with you, not my experience, because I could go on and just tell you endless stories, but share with you what I'm learning from a group of young leaders that I have had the privilege of getting to know through something called the Talberg Leadership Prize. And it's a foundation in Sweden where we start with crowdsourced 2,000 leaders, and we boil out of that with this incredible jury for 3 prizes. And in the course of doing that, I've learned a lot about what are the qualities that leaders need for the work life that we're facing and going into. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight and a foresight into some of the pace setters in leadership. And let me do that by going into my sharing of my screen. Let me escape for a minute here and go there. And in 1 second, I think I will have it. You can tell me, Simone, if you see my screen.
Oh, I see it now.
Okay, so here, let's do this. Where do I grab onto this? I'm going to do that and do this. Beautiful. So let's have a look at some of the front runners and pace setters for the few minutes that I've got here, because I think that will give you an insight into and this is what I've learned from these incredible leaders. Okay, Christiana Figueres, maybe some of you know her. She organized the entire diplomacy process of the Paris Agreement. What was Christiana's secret? Her secret was that she failed miserably in Copenhagen. And she said, I'm going to spend the next 6 years going to every senior leader around the world and ask them, what would you need for an agreement? So quiet diplomacy working over those years. By the time they had arrived in Paris, they knew what all those leaders wanted, and they were able to crystallize the Paris Agreement, a major, major achievement. So it was not only the leaders that you saw on the stage, but it was folks like Christiana. Here's a young leader that is truly remarkable, Nitya Ramanathan. Nitya figured out that if we were really going to get the projects going to help young lives in emerging markets, you know, she's touching about 1 billion lives. Babies are born on, sometimes people say rest of world in business. I like to say, you know, all of the world, because most of the world is actually where she's working. And what she's created is a way that she can use artificial intelligence, sensors, and monitoring devices to be able to track what is happening real time in the sourcing and development of medical supplies and other forms of development needs for people in emerging markets. She's got the Gates Foundation chasing after her. She's got an amazing group of folks who are really watching what it is that she's doing. And I hope sometime you get to meet someone like that. Bright Simons, and this man is truly bright. When I was interviewing him, I asked him the question at the end. He's a polymath. He knew about every form of political association, of engagement with medicine. And I said, Bright, your parents named you well. How is it that you're so bright? And he laughed, this funny laugh to me, and he said, but Tom, I have Google as well. So we're entering into this generation of folks everywhere in the world who start to have access to being able to develop their own dreams and their own visions. In short, Bright has figured out a way to create ways that you can detect fake pharmaceuticals, which is a huge problem in emerging markets. He's got the only lab in Ghana that you know, Caltech and MIT will talk to right now in terms of developing new products and new solutions. Faustin Linikula. Faustin is a dancer and a choreographer, and he's in the DRC. And you can ask, you know, what's happening with the choreographer in the DRC? He is essentially a community builder, and he uses dance and his body and new forms of engagement and drumming, and finds ways to do this. But not only that, he's a kind of Albert Schweitzer. So he travels around the world, and he's performing in the Met, he's performing in amazing spaces around the world, and at the same time goes back to work with his core community. When a young leader asked him, how do you deal with all the corruption that's happening in your part of the world? And he looked at her and he said, my dear, I'm a dancer, I have a spine. And without a spine, I am just a bowl of jelly on the ground. So if we aren't using our spine, and this is where ethics comes in, we're not actually achieving what it is that we want to achieve in our work and our life. Jared Genser, a man who's freeing political prisoners. What's special about Jared is he's pivoted from really being out there, and he's freed dozens of political prisoners around the world, to saying, why has the Convention on Human Rights not been rewritten since 1945? Answer, I'm going to go find out. And he went to the Secretary General and he said, is there a way that we can work together to rewrite the new Convention on Human Rights? Well, it turns out that we had another leader, Professor Raphael Yusta, who was working on neuroscience, who had a very big question that needed to be answered by Jared. And his question was, what are we going to do if other labs in the world start working like my lab and are able to manipulate the brains of animals from outside the cranium using laser technology, which is literally happening right now? And his greatest concern is a human rights concern. So we connected him up with Jared Genser. They are together writing the protocol for how do we think about protecting the contents of our minds. And their idea is, well, we've already lost the game when it comes to our data because that's in the hands of the big tech. Now we're going to see if we can't find a way to protect the real content of our brains, which is in the next generation going to get into the hands of the wrong people if we're not careful. Sylvia Earle. Now I point out Sylvia Earle was one of our oldest prize winners, and we had in our prize criteria that we didn't want people at the end of their careers. But I just want to say to you, at 80, she is continuing to discover the ocean. And Sylvia, who is a National Geographic explorer herself, has figured out that we actually are destroying nearly 10% of the ocean's bounty right now, and we only understand 2% of the ocean. We've got work to do. So she's created hotspots around the world for protecting marine ecosystems, and she's one of the drivers of the blue economy. You can see it in her beautiful blue tunic that she's wearing. So Sunita Krishnan, working on how do we help the victims of sex trafficking and work with them to recover. Now you may say, what does this have to do with business? She has worked together with all of the street vendors in the city that she's working in India to help them work with her to identify when women are being abused. And in a way, they band together and they work on developing real protocols for making sure that the supply chains of large companies are not making use of human trafficking. And again, new businesses, new things that are growing out of what Sunita is bringing us. And maybe I'll just stop there and escape from sharing and end what I'm going to say by saying, when you think about where you want to go in your work and your life going forward, as a young leader, as a mid-career, as somebody who's sitting on a board, take the time to go back to work on what is the deep intent of my work and life. How can I reframe what it is that I'm doing in a way that takes me to a consolidation of everything that I'm doing? Our life is like a rope that we weave together. And if we're not careful, that rope starts unraveling. And when I work with my coachees, my clients, I'm always thinking, how do you weave the rope? How do you pull together all those strands into a coherent narrative and story where you stand out, where you can collaborate and work together in the most profound and powerful ways, and step into the project of your life? And if you can do that, I think it's a gift to yourself, and it starts with yourself, because the next generation of leaders are not going to be depending on the Industrial Revolution, or they're not going to be depending on new models that were created in the last century. There's an entire group of us who all together are experiencing an emergence and the possibility of becoming. So really use your leadership qualities to become and to connect in the most powerful ways you can with your work and your life and where you want to go. So I think I'll just stop there, Simone, and leave that in your hands. And I hope you get a good sense of the kind of leaders that I think really are our pathfinders going forward.
Yes, it was amazing. Thank you very much for your chat, and I'm sure everyone here is now very inspired. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I will hand over directly to Yin, who is our team at the for the Social Impact Center.
Thank you very much. So the Ideas to Impact Challenge presents innovative ideas to solve some of the big global challenges we face today. As many of you know, there wouldn't even be a Social Impact Day without this annual competition, where we showcase the very best and most impactful startups from Imperial College London, with the common goal, of course, of achieving huge social impact. Past finalists are going to be successful startups who have gone on to raise a big amount of funding, such as Urja, Koala, Third Eye Intelligence, and many more. We're very proud to be involved with some truly innovative and inspiring young leaders, and we can't wait for you to hear their pitches. We'd also like to thank our judges who will be deciding the winners today. And first up, we have WeWalk. So if you want to share your screens, that would be a good time.
Actually, yeah, before we start, hello judges. I want to make sure that you have your rating sheets ready and got it. Okay, great.
Hopefully everyone can hear and see us.
Yes.
Lovely. Let's go again.
Hello, my name is Gökhan. I'm one of the co-founders of WeWalk, responsible from our international expansion. I'm also a master's student at Imperial College London Business School and studying business analytics.
Hi everyone, I'm Jean-Marc. I'm WeWalk's Head of Research and Development, and I'm also a PhD researcher at Imperial College under Professor Washington O-Chang at the Center for Transport Studies. And I'd like to begin with a small experiment. I'd like you all to imagine that you're walking down a busy street. Let's call it Exhibition Week. And say that you've got to attend a lecture at Imperial, or say that you just want to meet friends or family, or just grab a cup of coffee. Now, what if I told you you had your eyes closed and suddenly you've got to cross Exhibition Road? And what if I told you that the only tool you had to rely on was the standard simple white cane? It tells you nothing more but what's on the ground directly in front of you. That simply doesn't cut it anymore in the 21st century, and it's a problem which myself, my visually impaired team members, and over 253 million visually impaired people face worldwide on a day-to-day basis. And we wanted to change that. So at WeWalk, our mission is to empower our visually impaired community with cutting-edge tech to give us equal participation in day-to-day life. And here's our invention at WeWalk. It's an exercise in simplicity. We've taken the standard white cane, we've kept everything that's made it so great, but we've chopped off the handle at the top and we've replaced it with the WeWalk Smart Handle. It's got an ultrasonic sensor to give you upper body obstacle detection for things like low-hanging tree branches, giving the user a much better enhanced feeling of confidence and safety as well. But what's really cool is we haven't stopped there. We've actually built the WeWalk smartphone application for iOS and Android from the ground up, and it works with the WeWalk Smart Cane, so users can put their phones in their pockets and use WeWalk's built-in touchpad, speaker, microphone, and a bunch of different sensors to fully control the navigation and exploration experience built by the WeWalk app. And the WeWalk app really is, and I can say this because I use it on a day-to-day basis, the most comprehensive navigation experience for visually impaired people, built on a whole host of user requirements and literature review. Our low vision mapping interface works anywhere, even in places with no mapping. We built the first multimodal navigation system for visually impaired people, so WeWalk can even tell you what bus to get to, what train to get off. It really is an all-inclusive companion. And our vision for WeWalk is to make it a personal hub for our visually impaired community, one that brings together all these great mobility features to empower our users to access the smart cities and services around them. One of our first projects that is actually backed by Microsoft and even their very own Cindy Rose is part of their AI for Accessibility program, where we're using WeWalk's built-in sensors, including the gyroscope and the accelerometer, to find out how visually impaired people are moving, looking at their mobility characteristics and feeding this back to mobility trainers, healthcare professionals, and even researchers at Imperial College London. And with this first-of-a-kind data, we can understand how visually impaired people move, their requirements, and hopefully make cities even more accessible. So a really cool R&D project built on top of our platform. Another exciting project is with our very own Imperial College again, friends and family, and Washington O-Chang from the CTS, as well as the Royal National Institute for Blind People, and this is backed by UKRI, and we're using WeWalk's built-in sensors along with Imperial College's positioning expertise to build an indoor navigation system for WeWalk, hence solving a huge problem for visually impaired people. And we're going to be piloting our system in the Skempton building, so very much keeping it local. And by bringing all these features together, we're proud to say that we can solve the issues of over 253 million people worldwide. If they're in highly economically developed countries, we can provide public transit navigation. And for places that are less economically developed, WeWalk still works to provide obstacle detection as well as mapping, even in places where mapping doesn't exist. And we're proud to say that with no marketing effort, and in just 1 year, we've managed to hit over 15,000 visually impaired people in over 60 countries, all of them using our apps on a day-to-day basis and loving our experience. And the market for this is absolutely huge from a business perspective. Visual impairment, unfortunately, comes with age, and the visually impaired population in the UK is going to double to 4 million in 2050. And these numbers on screen, that's just for visually impaired assistive tech. We're not even talking about indoor navigation or mobility training, which are the new markets that WeWalk are pioneering, as well as its core markets.
And we, as a go-to-market strategy, we have 3 pillars. So we are selling from our website and also from marketplaces such as Amazon. And we are also focusing on our partnerships with these international organizations such as RNIB and CNIB. So we have over 40 partners to make WeWalk available in the local markets. But we are focusing also on our government partnerships. So we have a recent success story with the Minister of Education in Turkey, and we are delivering WeWalk to the hands of visually impaired students to give them mobility training sessions from the very beginning. And we established WeWalk in 2019 and started with a crowdfunding campaign over Indiegogo in the US. And last year, we raised our seed funding, and now we are focusing on our international growth and reaching 1 million people as soon as we can. And our product also been validated by with prestigious organizations such as Time Magazine, for example, selected us one of the best inventions of the year. And we got Edison Awards in the health and wellness category, and also Fast Company mentioned us as one of the world-changing ideas.
So as we like to say at WeWalk, alone we can do so little,
but together we can do so much.
Thank you so much for listening, and we're very excited to take this forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please stay behind to get some questions from the judges.
Hi everyone. So thanks for the pitch and happy to shoot with the first question. So I'm just curious to understand, can you tell a bit more about the team? So it sounds like it's a huge platform and a very powerful platform that you're building with a lot of products. So how do you want to build also the team in the next years to come to make sure that you can deliver what you are planning to build?
Of course, so from the very beginning, we wanted WeWalk to be sustainable and global without having to send thousands of team members across the world to sort of scope out transport locations. So from the very beginning, we've actually built the WeWalk app, including its APIs, to sort of take in and be able to work with global APIs. So we're working with Microsoft Azure, for instance, to get over 1,500 cities' public transit data. So we can keep our in-house development team strong, whilst also allowing WeWalk to be used across the world rather than just in the UK. But right now, we've built a product. So we've got our best APIs. We handpicked all the navigation and positioning APIs we need. WeWalk is real, it's on the market. We're lucky to say we've got a great manufacturing partner. That's Vestel in Turkey, the largest European manufacturer. But now we're building our growth team. So in the last year or so, we've grown to over 20 people with a lot of customer and sales members joining us. So we've got teams working directly with our customers, sort of inducing them to WeWalk, understanding what's working, what's not working, because of course we always have to keep improving. But now we're building our global expansion. So we've got 7 countries we're working in. We're sealing over 40 deals with countries across the world. So obviously our headquarters in the UK, we've got the rest of our team in Turkey, we're building in the US. We recently got a new sales rep in the US. We're looking at areas such as Canada, Germany, places that tend to have a lot of support for visually impaired individuals. Because again, no point in building a product if no one can actually sort of buy it without local support. So we're choosing and very carefully selecting our regions of expansions to make sure that we can reach as many people as quickly as possible with the support of our distribution and government partners.
Okay, thank you.
Can I go next? First of all, thank you very much for a very good presentation. My question is, what is your pricing strategy? So how can you ensure that your hardware is actually affordable to customers, but also how can you ensure that you have a long-term strategy in place such that the production facilities are affordable to you as a business?
So at the moment, WeWalk is recommended retail price is $600. So although it is in comparison to other assistive tech solutions, it's quite affordable in comparison to others. But still, we are aware that this could be a quite high price point for people, especially from emerging countries. So that's why we developed our software-only solution as well. So you can use WeWalk. Of course, it will give an enhanced experience. But with software, you can also get access to some of the benefits of WeWalk, and you can enhance your mobility without depending on a hardware solution. But also, we are working with telecom operators, for example. We are discussing with them how we can subsidize the cost, and we can make WeWalk more affordable in some certain countries. And these government partnerships also, we believe that it will help us to be able to provide WeWalk for the people who cannot afford it.
Thank you.
Just have time for one quick question if anyone wants to ask.
Well, I would have one quick one. So you mentioned 26% retention. Is it for the software only product, or is it for the hardware plus software solution? And what is the reason? Are you satisfied with this retention, or how do you plan to increase that?
So we're actually extremely happy with the retention. This is for a combination of software and hardware, but we feel that hardware usually is substantially higher. Once a user buys a WeWalk cane, they're practically owned it forever. So the number is much more reflective of software, and that's a really high rate. So again, this is now speaking from a lot of personal experience. Visually impaired people have such a huge range of different needs that you typically download an application, open it up, realize, you know what, I actually don't really want to use this, and log off. So what ends up happening is you end up getting a community of people that are completely blind using an application like Blind Spot, but not too many low vision users. Or you might get a lot of low vision users deciding to use another mapping application. And you end up getting a whole segregation of the mapping experience. So before WeWalk on my phone, I used to have about 6 different mapping applications. I download one and then never end up using it again unless I'm in an emergency. So 26% actually is relatively high. A lot of our users are joining in, even blind or even low vision. And they're actually sticking on the platform. And the numbers are only getting higher. So recently, and we make a huge effort on this. Again, maybe because we're Imperial students, we love our data. But we have weekly and monthly reports. So we can actually track our users' growth, the index of how they're using our features, what features are working well, what features need to be improved. And we're seeing that number go up. And again, it's a huge achievement for the visually impaired community. You know, it's a very different market to try to access. We've been flying all over the place, speaking to users. It's not easy. So at least keeping this level of users is, we're actually very proud of that figure. We hope it will keep getting better and better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, WeWalk. Next up is eWash. So if you'd like to share your screen.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
So good afternoon, everyone. We are Team eWash from Imperial College London, and today we will be pitching our idea for laundry tasks with off-grid washing machines for rural communities. So let's start off by looking at what life might look like for a woman in a Rwandan village called Minazi. This is Sonia. She is a 30-year-old. She will get up early in the morning, get her kids ready for school, and then start her day at work. But she's also the primary caretaker, so she has a big responsibility at home. And one of her biggest tasks is laundry. So a few times a week, she will have to go down a steep hill to the river to wash her family's clothes. And the laundry itself takes about 2 hours, and the journey up and down the steep hill can often take another 2 hours as well. So something as simple as laundry that we rarely give time or attention to takes up to 4 hours for women like Sonia. She may want to grow her business, or she may want to spend more time with her family, but at the moment, most of her time goes into chores. And there are many other women like Sonia who face this problem, not just in Minazi, but in villages around the world as well. Because of this time poverty, many women lack financial independence, and as a result, they also tend to work much longer hours than men, with 60% of the work they do being unpaid. But we believe it doesn't have to be this way, and this is where eWash can help. We want to reduce the time poverty of rural women, as well as economically empower them. And this is why we're proposing a laundry kiosk business that is run by local female entrepreneurs.
How this is going to work is that there will be laundry kiosks dotted around the village, each with our own low-cost off-grid washing machine. The washing machine is mobile and does not rely on water and electricity infrastructure. This is because it's fully automated, which contributes to our aim of alleviating time poverty. It's battery-powered, which means it does not rely on electricity networks, but rather can be integrated smoothly with solar-powered communities. The washing machine is also designed to be low-cost because the materials can be sourced and built locally. In terms of water supply for the washing machine, we propose rainwater harvesting, which can store and filter water for daily use. It's easy to implement into existing village housing and has relatively low cost. This method creates various co-benefits for the villagers, such as resilience to droughts and floods.
We've completed our first trial in summer 2019, when we brought our first prototype to Rwanda for field tests and demonstrated it to as many as 400 people. And the feedback we got included that I want a washing machine because it will reduce the time I spend washing clothes. This is new technology for us. And this just shows our potential for change. In the past years, we spent our time developing and improving our first MVP based on the feedback that we got. And the next step is to bring the new MVP to Rwanda for field tests and conduct a trial run right there. We want the washing machine project to also economically empower women. As a case study, we found that a Syrian woman was trained as a seamstress, which means she can run her business making dresses and be financially independent. And we want to have the same impact for women in Rwanda and other countries. We were introduced to Sonia initially and the burden she carries. Offering a solution will not only reduce time poverty and increase economic empowerment for her, but the millions of women globally who are in the same situation. Thanks for your attention, and we are very happy to answer all your questions.
Perfect. Judges?
Well, thanks so much for your presentation. Really a great thing that you're working on. So what do you think, what will be your main challenge in the next 2 years? Is it more on the hardware side or is it more operational? I'm really just curious, what are your thoughts on that after doing the first field experiment 2 years ago?
Thank you very much for your question. There are a few major hurdles that we have identified. And the first one being the acceptability of the local villages. But as we mentioned, from the field test, we know that they are very optimistic about this opportunity. They are very excited. We've received very positive feedback. So it's a great thing that they are willing to accept this product, and it's going to be very useful for them, especially for the women who can be empowered in terms of more freedoms and more time that they can spend on developing their own interests or developing new financial sources. But another hurdle that we think it will be challenging in the coming few years is the cost of implementing this washing machine. So the production cost, transportation costs, implementation costs, to some extent, it will be transferred to the users. However, in order to support them fully to minimize the cost of using this machine, we are implementing a kiosk operating system so that the washing machine will be shared between multiple villages, and they will be paying and using them collectively so that they can share the cost, but also benefit from these machines collectively to maximize the impact that they can get from using them.
Okay, and what does that mean for your business model? So what is the business model that you have maybe already been thinking about?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the business model, first of all, we want to try to do a first run field test there. We have been sourcing different opportunities of producing the machine locally and also sourcing for some cheaper materials. So basically the idea of building this washing machine is to be most cost efficient as possible. And so the way of operating this machine is also to save water and save electricity, so that when the villagers operate this machine, it will be is not going to become an extra burden to their daily lives in terms of financial ability.
I mean, on that note, you were saying that they were going to share this washing machine, and obviously, have you thought about how you're going to be moving it around and whether that's actually going to take up quite a considerable amount of their time, whether they'd want to share it? As you said, it's run by entrepreneurial women. They're probably doing a pretty good job. How have you considered selling this proposition to them of the fact that they would have to share it?
Maybe I can take this question. Can you hear me all right? So we have thought about, to answer your question first, in terms of the implementation, we have thought about that. And obviously, if we're going to build it in the UK and then ship it over, that's going to be a huge hassle, and obviously the cost involved now would be astronomical. So we're obviously not doing that, which is why we have designed the washing machine specifically to use locally available materials that can be bought and sourced from local markets. So from the expeditions that we went, we know that there is weekly markets that these villages go to, and where they can find a lot of these kind of off-the-shelf parts. For example, like the wood or the buckets that we use for a washing machine, you can all find them in the markets. So like, honestly, it's very simple to just source the parts locally, and the transportation fees will then be much minimized. And to answer your second, so that's in terms of the cost and how we implement it in terms of that. And to answer your second question, you asked about whether the users who want to share this machine. I mean, ideally, our vision is that we do want to help as much women, like as much families and much households as possible. But because of, I guess, the cost associated with it, it doesn't make economical sense, nor does it make sort of, I guess, like sense in terms of the resources needed, or in terms of kind of the capabilities for one household to operate one washing machine themselves. So from what we've seen in the expeditions, the community we are targeting is very communal. So they have a lot of shared facilities. For example, they have shared shared office, kind of like village head sector offices. They have shared kind of places where they get water, like they have shared, I guess, communal spaces. So I don't think that is a very big concern to, I guess, for us.
Thank you very much, Ewash. Next up, we have Nexicath. So if you could share your screen, that'd be great.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen and hear me okay? Perfect. Imagine a situation where you have to take your loved one to hospital because of a health issue. To help them urinate, staff insert a medical device called a urinary catheter. Initially, you're relieved. They've had catheters inserted before and they've never caused a problem. However, this time things seem to be different. Your loved one becomes even sicker than before. They start to run a high fever and become delirious. Imagine how you would feel when you found out that the catheter, a device that is supposed to help patients, instead opened a gateway for bacteria to enter their bodies and cause even more harm to your loved one. These catheter-associated urinary tract infections, or CAUTIs, happen to 50% of all catheterized patients. As only the sickest patients are catheterized, this results in longer hospital stays with potentially fatal secondary infections. Across the NHS, estimates show that 1,700 deaths per year are caused directly as a result of CAUTIs. Moreover, the use of antibiotics to treat these infections contributes to the development of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which the World Health Organization has identified as one of the single biggest leading threats to global health, food security, and development today. CAUTIs also come with a steep price tag. Hospital stays are twice as long, and treatment costs are around £1,700 per person, resulting in a whopping £2 billion spent by the NHS per year. Part of why CAUTIs are so prevalent is because the traditional catheter design has not been changed since 1937. This design existed before we understood how the bladder worked and protects from bacterial invasion, and hence traditional catheters often cause erosion of the protective layer on the bladder. Once that protective layer is gone, bacteria in the urine then multiply, causing a urinary tract infection. Stronger and stronger antibiotics are then used as a result to manage infection. In order to address this devastating problem, we've developed Nexicath. We have redesigned the standard catheter to stick better to each patient's bladder, preventing residual urine from forming a pool of bacteria in their bladder. Our design also incorporates natural compounds called urease inhibitors to prevent bacterial growth, breaking the cycle of antibiotic dependence in catheterized patients. And lastly, we have incorporated a novel material design that prevents bacteria from sticking to and growing on the inner surface of the catheter. NexaCath is unique from all other products on the market because we are creating a design that tackles all areas that contributes to potential bacterial growth. Current products on the market only focus on 1 or 2 areas of catheter redesign, which limits its efficacy in preventing infection. Additionally, our vision of significantly decreasing antibiotic use sets us apart from our competition. The catheter market is worth an estimated £1.1 billion in Europe. Internationally, the global catheter market is expected to have a compound annual growth rate of 6% from 2019 to 27. We have initially decided to target countries such as the UK, China, India, and Mexico because of their growing patient population, increasing improvements to health infrastructure, and rising healthcare expenditure. Coupled with low competition from other catheter producers, the potential for business expansion is vast. We are reaching our target market using a B2B2C structure. Initially, we will cooperate with private healthcare companies like Bupa to reach our patient population, and eventually build up our portfolio so that we can market NexaCath directly to CCGs or sell via the NHS supply chain. This is an overview of our roadmap to market. We intend to finish our prototype and finish performance testing within the first 2 years, gain regulatory approval, and enter the market. Our first 2 phases of market entering will focus on UK expansion, and phases 3 and 4 will focus on international expansion. This is an overview of the traction we've had so far. I'm happy to go over this more during our Q&A session, and we wouldn't be able to be here without our wonderful team. So I want to leave you with this. On an individual scale, we expect NexaCath to benefit millions of people like my granddad, helping him live a better quality of life and reducing the potential for life-threatening infection. But we also expect NexaCath to have an effect on the global scale, contributing to the fight against antibiotic resistance and improving healthcare as a whole, which will effectively impact everyone that uses healthcare services. So join NexaCath in the fight to save lives, reduce hospital costs, and fight antibiotic resistance for the patients of today, but also for the patients of tomorrow.
Thank you, NexaCath. The judges.
Congrats, that was a great pitch. So I was interested in that 6% CAGR. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason you're seeing a 6% CAGR is because we use a variety of catheters, and urinary catheters are just one of those. And the reason that that CAGR is growing like that is because we have an increasing elderly patient population. As you know, as soon as you hit a certain age, especially for males, you have problems with your prostate. With females, you just have a higher incidence of UTIs as a whole because of age, hence why that CAGR is growing. And we actually expect the CAGR to grow even more, with the rising patient population. As I'm sure you've heard, in the regions such as, Asia Pacific, the elderly population is outweighing the young upcoming population by a lot. So yeah, it's a large figure.
And on top of that, in terms of protecting your product from anyone copying it, have you done anything to try and protect that, like a patent or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So we haven't entered the market yet, so a patent's not applicable at the minute, but we do have a patent attorney that's ready to go with us. As soon as we get our prototype off the ground, he will be protecting our very important product.
Great, thanks.
Well, thank you. That was a great pitch. I can just say that also from my side. Can you speak a bit more about the team? So you were showing the 3 co-founders, I assume. So how do you split up the roles? So who is doing what?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to share on that page whilst I talk through this. Just so you can get a bit more detail on what our strengths are as a team. So Despina is a current PhD student. She has a lot of experience with biomaterials, so she will be developing the product, doing the back end sort of testing. She's going to do bacterial testing on 8 different types of bacteria just to make sure we're targeting both the currently antibiotic resistant bacteria and the more common E. coli style bacteria. Reza is our CEO. We call him our CEO, but we really work all together as on an equal sort of standpoint, but he has experience in nanotechnology as well. His thesis for his MSc was actually on nanotechnology application in calces, so he's got a lot of experience in that aspect. Reza and I are also both medical students. I'm a little bit younger than other team members, but I'm very passionate about medical marketing, as you can probably tell from the pitch. And that being said, because we are medical students, we're in a great place to start marketing to CCGs because we're already within the system and we know who to go to within the hierarchy, who will have the power to take our product on.
Thank you.
I had one question. Thank you for the presentation. One thing I was going to ask is, how do you sort of intend to measure your impact on your sort of end user over time, and to understand how you would maybe continue building on the product and improving on the product? And maybe like a former question to that is, how did you end up with this product now? How did you go through different iterations to kind of get to this product?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. We actually started NexaCath because as medical students on wards, we were speaking to patients who were catheterized. So most patients that go through surgery are catheterized, and they were telling us it was extremely painful. And obviously, if you have a calci, the process of putting in a catheter, like I have one right here, it's really invasive. It's not comfortable. It hurts to sit down. And calces just make everything that much worse. So we thought, surely there's a better situation. Surely there's a better answer than the catheter we were using in 1937. And so we took that idea to Despina. She looked through a range of literature and formulated a new product. It consists of different things. So for example, the coating, it's shown to be effective in different kinds of products, not catheters specifically, but we believe that obviously with testing, it would be applicable to catheters as well. And we spoke to patients and got their top concerns listed out. So one of the first ones for patients obviously is comfort, but actually one of the highest things of importance for clinicians was preventing infection. And so we tried to couple both of that into our design, and we're going to measure these outcomes by QALYs. I don't know how much you've heard about the QALYs, is quality adjusted life years in our patients. If their QALYs increase and the levels of calci decrease, that's how we know we're hitting our targets, and we plan to, keep redeveloping the project to, fit those targets.
Thank you very much, NexaCath.
Thank you.
Next, we have water.
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you see my slides all right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. There are nearly 800 million people around the world living in communities without access to electricity. This impacts every facet of life, ranging from education to gender equality. In fact, a community gaining access to a clean source of electricity contributes towards 11 of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. For up to 500 million people, mini-grids will be the most cost-effective path to gaining access to electricity. Solar is widely hailed as the breakthrough technology that will power these mini-grids, but that comes at a cost. The intermittency of solar limits the impacts of gaining access to electricity. Children are still exposed to harmful fumes from kerosene lamps when they study at night, and local entrepreneurs can't invest in new equipment if they can't reliably use it when they need it. Batteries are a common solution, which is inadequate in itself, but also more than doubles the cost for these communities. Instead, we need a source of electricity that communities can rely on all the time. Despite 87% of the world's population living within 3 kilometers of a river, micro hydropower is not currently expected to play any role in powering these mini-grids. This is because current forms are unsuitable for 3 main reasons. Firstly, current forms require either high flow speed or a large drop in height. This means that it limits the regions where hydropower is feasible in the first place. And secondly, is that it's expensive. Current forms require fairly extensive civil works, which is very impractical in remote communities. And because they use rotary parts, they require regular maintenance. And finally, it's not easy to add additional capacity as the energy demand grows over time. And that's where water comes in. We've developed a completely new 10 kilowatt micro hydropower device that solves all three of these challenges. Other innovative devices have tried to reinvent the turbine. We got away with the turbine altogether, and that unique approach enables us to operate cost effectively in flat areas at roughly 17% of the minimum economical flow speeds of our best competitor. Water doesn't require any flow alteration and is simply sunk to the riverbed, weighted by sand. This means that no expensive civil works are required. We also estimate that our cost, without taking into account economies of scale, will be about £15,000. This means that we can be cost competitive with solar. Our device is also modular, which means we can deploy multiple devices in a single stretch of river. And as energy demand grows over time, additional units can be added to keep pace as the community adopts electrical appliances. We can also make bigger versions of our device, which allows us to be flexible in meeting the needs of different use cases across various sectors. The World Bank estimates that the annual profit pool attributable to just the generation segment of the mini-grid value chain to be $3.7 billion by 2030. That's profit, not revenue. Separately from this, the global small hydropower market is worth about $3 billion a year. Our business model is simple. We'll sell our hardware B2B, predominantly to mini-grid developers and to the agricultural industry. And in markets where we don't operate, we'll look to lease our IP. Before entering the cost-sensitive energy access market, we aim to first sell our device here in the UK. This will enable us to demonstrate reliability, as well as generate cash flow whilst we iterate our design and reach economies of scale. When speaking to potential customers, we've been blown away by the enthusiasm that we've been greeted with. 2 agricultural consultancies have signed letters of interest for us to sell our devices to their clients, both here and abroad. And just this morning, we received a letter of interest from a UK partner who wants to finance the purchase of our devices for their agricultural clients. The London Council of Hounslow is also interested in partnering with us on a pilot deployment, which is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate reliability and gain some free publicity. Our well-rounded entrepreneurial team brings together engineering and business competencies, and we're supported by a growing team of strategy and technical advisors with deep expertise relevant to our business, who have also helped us validate our technical feasibility. The next step in our roadmap is to build the testing facilities that will enable us to rapidly iterate our prototypes until we are ready to secure a UK patent and build our first full-scale generator. In the 21st century, it's unacceptable that more than 1 in 10 people don't have access to electricity to enable economic growth, sanitation, and more. Any money and mentorship we win today would accelerate our vision to improve energy access across the world. At Water, we aren't in the business of energy access. We're in the business, we aren't in the business of electricity. We're in the business of empowering communities. Thank you, and we'd love to take your questions.
Thank you, Water. Judges?
I guess, can I start?
Go for it.
Right, first of all, Sheldon, thank you very much for a very good presentation. My question is about your competition. So who are your main competitors, and also who are the main alternatives to your product? So what are your target clients are already using, and how's your solution better?
Sure. So in terms of competitors, there are, in terms of micro hydropower, and then we'll look at alternatives. Micro hydropower, there are 2 main competitors that are like the big ones. One is a company called Water Rotor, which has been developing their product for about 10 years, but is still not commercially available. But based on the data that they put out, they can operate cost effectively, requiring about 4 to 5 miles an hour of flow. So we can still operate significantly slower than them. They also estimate that they'll be selling at about $50,000. So that's about £35,000, I think it was. So we can undercut them on price and improve performance, and we require less space within the channel. So that's great. And the other hydropower competitor is a company called Turbulent, it's a Belgian company. They do a slightly different thing. They do what's called run-of-river schemes. So they actually excavate a channel from the side of the river and flow water through there, and then they use their own innovative turbine to generate electricity. So those are the 2 main competitors. That second one, Turbulent, they require a drop in height. So it's not suitable for flat areas. In terms of alternatives, we've mentioned solar and battery powers. So solar and battery packs, that is what is currently being foreseen as the main thing to generate electricity for these mini grids. which, as we said, is either intermittent or expensive if you add battery packs. And then a lot of communities are currently using diesel generators, which is insanely expensive, especially when it's remote communities and it's hard to get fuel to them.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, Sheldon. Thanks also from my side. So which regions or countries do you plan to target first?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, we'll look to sell here in the UK first. This is because it's a less cost-sensitive market, so it's a more viable path for us to actually start getting some cash flow and get economies of scale. From there, we will move into markets like Africa. We have one of the partners, Regen Farm, that signed a letter of interest for us, works with a lot of farmers across Africa, but in particular in Nigeria. And they actually asked us to do a pilot deployment with them in Nigeria at a farm called Babechi Farm, which is a huge commercial demonstration farm. So we'll be using our networks, our partners' networks to expand rather than looking at, let's just pick a market.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the judges? Okay, if not, then so next up, thank you very much, Walter. And next up, we have Cleanest Diapers.
Great, thank you. I will just share. Is that visible for everyone? Beautiful. Okay. Let me just rearrange here. Okay. Great. Rima, are you good to go? Just get a thumbs up. Great. Cool. Okay. Hi, I'm Morgan.
And I'm Rima. We're co-founders of Cleanest. We want you to remember two numbers, 5,000 and 500. 5,000 is the average number of nappies every single child uses before potty training. Almost all of them end up in landfills. 500 is the average number of years it takes for a nappy to decompose in landfills. That's 16 generations.
Nappies are full of plastic, making them the third most abundant household waste in the UK. Also, customers are really confused about how to properly dispose of nappies, particularly as more and more companies promote green nappies. As a result, people are throwing their nappies in the wrong bin, which is destroying tons of recyclable material. London spends £32 million of taxpayers' money annually. With 8 million residents in London alone, we can quickly see the ecological and financial burden of this global problem.
What's more, the big players in the industry have zero incentive to innovate. In a $70 billion market, sustainable nappies make up just 4.5%. We spoke with dozens of carers to understand how these industry dynamics align with customers' needs. Carers told us that durability, skin friendliness, comfort, and convenience are their top priorities when selecting a nappy brand. Meaning environmental credentials are only a nice to have. Most importantly, nappies must hold up at 3 a.m. That said, 82% of the carers we interviewed feel guilty about their nappy routine after learning of its negative environmental impact. We know we can do better. Meet Cleanest, a best-in-class sustainable nappy with unprecedented circularity, delivered hassle-free to our customer's door on a subscription basis. Changing the game, we're developing a 100% plastic-free nappy together with Imperial engineers and suppliers of cutting-edge materials. We're focusing our innovations on 3 key features: the elastics, the absorbent core, and the fasteners, which make nappies so difficult to recycle and where we have the opportunity to drive innovation in the industry. However, we're not stopping there because we're not your typical nappy brand.
We want to drive inclusive systemic change. So we're also developing a nappy collection service for families of all shapes and sizes, no matter the brand they use. You can see here our plastic-free design and waste management services are unique in the market. But we need your help to achieve our mission of ending nappy waste. The prize money would enable us to launch our waste pilot, which is a vital step in our product development process. We want to ensure that the materials we are prototyping and the design we bring to life don't exacerbate the existing problem. The goal of our waste pilot is to test customer willingness to pay for home collection, scalability of home collection, and our strategies for connecting used nappies to industries where the waste is a valuable input, such as electricity generation and concrete production. The customer revenues we will generate will be reinvested in our nappy development. London is the ideal pilot market. It's diverse and densely populated, offering access to a wide range of families. It has a recycling culture, and there's significant government support for addressing climate change. In addition, we can test our customer acquisition strategy for carers who are environmentally conscious, often on the go, and willing to pay for solutions that offer convenience and peace of mind. We're designing our pilot with input from Green Bottoms, a national company with 12 years of experience providing waste solutions for nurseries. We've also consulted the North London Waste Authority and recycling innovation companies like Grey Parrot to ensure our pilot is practical and in line with government policy. Our strategy will leave customers guilt-free and nappy-free, keep our landfills nappy-free, and enable government to be burden-free.
We're building cleanest at Imperial. Our team draws from the Business School and Dyson School of Engineering. We speak 7 languages, hail from 3 continents, and we have experience spanning retail, product design engineering, and waste to energy. We've brought on board 3 advisors with experience in material science and circular systems design. In addition to being here today, we're currently in the semifinals of the Mayor's Entrepreneurship Awards for driving change in our capital. Together, we can ensure that those 2 key numbers, 5,000 and 500, won't define our future generations. With Cleanest, we can divert the equivalent of 5 billion plastic bags from UK landfills annually and play a major role in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals 11 and 12. We're Cleanest, and we're changing nappies
for a cleaner future.
Thank you very much, Cleanest. Now on to the judges.
So congratulations, guys. Great pitch. And actually, I worked for a company called True, previously to Project A, who invested in a reusable nappy brand, which they bought into their organic children's wear brand, Frugi. So how do you see yourself up against that market? And obviously, I also, well, not obviously, I have a little nephew, and I can see my sister liking the idea of a reusable nappy, but actually in practice, it's not at all practical. So I definitely like your route, but it's always great to get your perspective of why you made the decision not to go on a reusable nappy rather than what you've produced.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raised really 2 points there. The first is on the behavioral change that's required from customers. So you've seen we've done a lot of user research interviews, and perhaps it's worth mentioning that what our ambition to do is actually pull more of the mainstream towards an ecologically sound or more advantageous solution. The kind of eco warriors of the world are quite comfortable with reusable nappies, but we actually have seen that the adoption rate or willingness to try that kind of solution is actually really low because of that behavioral change. You have to soak them daily, you have to wash. And these kind of elements for parents that are quite stressed and trying to manage, the balance of childcare, it's a lot to ask. On the other half of that, there's actually the research around how green are reusable nappies to begin with. So in our consultations with the North London Waste Authority, for example, they've even kind of backtracked on some of their communications around encouraging people to use reusable nappies, because it's quite down to the actual individual behavior of a carer and how they wash those reusable nappies that dictates how green they are. So if you're washing them every day, if you're doing that in a separate load of laundry from what you're already doing, you're using electricity, you're using water, and you're doing that on a daily basis. And so where it can be a really great solution for some people, it doesn't quite align. We don't think it's realistic for trying for a solution to pull more of the mainstream towards a greener solution.
Thank you. Do you also plan to protect the design in a way of the nappies, or is it more a branding and execution play, or likely a mixture of both? But how do you think about protecting your position in the market or strengthening your position in the market?
It's a really interesting point. We have seen a really interesting trend in the nappy industry generally, as newer players are moving in to kind of disrupt the Procters and Gamble's and Kimberly-Clark's of the worlds. And actually, as part of this movement, and it's very much in line with the customer base, the kind of millennial generation, myself, that's becoming carers now, there's this real ambition for transparency and understanding where the materials come from and where the raw materials are come from and how they've been sourced and where they're ending up, and actually what reactions they have with your baby in terms of skin friendliness and allergies and this kind of thing. So we think there's a good opportunity to go for the sort of design rights route. But we're hoping to be able to get to market fast enough and actually not get bogged down in a lot of the legalities and costs that are associated with the IP routes, because we think we can lean on this transparency and openness of our design and our approach that will enable us to set ourselves apart in the market. Of course, also, as you said, with a quite robust marketing and brand positioning plan.
Any more questions from the judges? Okay, all right, thank you very much, Cleanest. And next we have Sakun. Oh, Bethany, do you have a question?
Nope, all good.
Please, Sakun, please start your pitch.
Yeah.
You're just lagging a bit. Just give me a few more seconds to fix your screen. Okay, so it seems like Sakura. Okay.
Sorry, is that working now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Is it still loading for you?
It's
well?
Yeah, try and just go full screen and then let me know when I'm ready to time.
There we go. Is that full screen for you? Sorry about that. Every year, cardiovascular diseases claim 18 million lives and impose 366 million disability-adjusted life years. The burden of CVD is not shared equitably, though, with at least 75% of CVD deaths occurring in Pakistan, where the crisis has been worsening for the last 25 years. For the 37 million Pakistani patients, travel, wait times, and expenditures of up to 80% of their savings are three key reasons why treatments are burdensome, and many are forced to forego care, which regrettably leads to deaths from preventable secondary events. Sakun aims to remedy this by providing a cardiac rehabilitation program from the comfort of the patient's home. Interviewing patients at the National Institute of CVD in Karachi demonstrated a strong appetite for at-home care, with 76% expressing an interest in paying for our service. Since then, we have developed and tested our first visit with 5 patients to positive feedback. Sakun's service begins when a CVD patient texts us to organize a visit. A Sakun nurse then visits the patient at their home and delivers a cardiac rehabilitation program covering their condition, lifestyle, education, exercise, and emotional distress. As their condition is chronic, patients have fortnightly visits over 12 weeks as we support their recovery to leave them healthier and empowered to take charge of their health. By taking healthcare to patients, we eliminate costly equipment, cardiologist fees, and crucially, the expensive hospital setting. Consequently, our main expenditures will be our nurses' wages and operating costs. We will employ a cross-subsidization model with patients paying for our service. Based on market research and patient interviews, we aim to charge 1,000 Pakistani rupees to patients in affluent areas and 200 to those in less well-off neighborhoods. Additionally, franchising will provide another revenue source while facilitating rapid scaling. Currently, patients can seek care from local clinics, public and private hospitals, and even online. Of our competitors, though, only hospitals offer cardiac rehabilitation, but they come with the cost of traveling and waiting for 4 hours, two deterrents that patients hate. On top of that, patients are charged a premium for a service that they find inconvenient. This all makes Sukoon an attractive prospect as the only home-based cardiac rehabilitation service. We have already begun our journey in Karachi, where there are 2.7 million CVD patients, and given the state of the market, we aim to capture 90,000 patients by 2023 with our early adopters belonging to middle and emerging middle income demographics. By 2027, we aim to cover the whole of Pakistan and serve at least 1.2 million patients. And by 2033, we aspire to expand across South Asia. We are a team of life science graduates from Imperial with complementary backgrounds in healthcare and business. Janine has managed CVD patients in a hospital and is a business development manager at Atco Laboratories in Karachi. As a native to the city, she oversees on-ground operations. Hunsa, who has previously raised over £40,000 equity-free, leverages her entrepreneurial experience to manage our legal, marketing, and finance strategies. Meanwhile, I use my background in pharmacovigilance and bioinformatics to build our data-driven prototype with patient safety and compliance in mind. We are supported by a core team with expertise in law, healthcare, and cardiology, as well as experts in healthcare, insurance, law, investment, and entrepreneur core team with expertise in law, healthcare, and cardiology to validate the problem. Since then, we have been iteratively testing the service with a patient base, helping them rediscover activities they once enjoyed and regain independence so that they can take charge of their health. Presently, we're testing the full 6-visit program, getting legal protection and building partnerships to obtain equipment, train nurses, and patient referrals to conduct a randomized control trial to rigorously test the efficacy of Sukoon's at-home care. While everything we have achieved thus far has been at no cost, we are getting closer and closer to needing soft funding in order to bring all aspects of Sukoon together. So we aim to raise £20,000 through grants and our own pockets to cover these costs. To that end, we hope you join Sukoon by connecting us to cardiologists and partners to increase patient access and by funding our mission to reduce inequity in healthcare.
Thank you very much. Judges?
Thank you. Can you please tell me once again, how would the unit economics work? Because what I understood, you would be cheaper than the alternatives, but the doctors are actually visiting the patients. So I'm just curious, how does that work then for you in terms of unit economics?
So with our model, we intend to use a cross-subsidization. So for the poorer patients, they'll be paying 200, the richer ones 1,000, and the doctors would be referring patients to us. But the incentive for them is that we are taking the high workload, low revenue work away from them, so that we are freeing up their resources and their time to then dedicate their energy towards the work that is actually much more profitable for them. And then in the public sector, we're freeing up the resources that are really, really overstretched at the moment.
All right, thank you.
Any other judges?
I have a question. First of all, again, thank you very much. A very good presentation, a very clear presentation. I do have another question about unit economics. You charge customers anywhere from 200 to 1,000. But how much does the cost of service for a doctor cost? So, for example, if you were to employ a doctor and this particular doctor would visit a patient for 3 hours, how much would you have to pay this doctor, and would it make your business model viable?
So currently, cardiac rehabilitation programs for a session at a public hospital costs 1,600 Pakistani rupees, and then in the private sector, it's up to 3,000 rupees, I think is the average. And in those cases, it's actually not the cardiologist that you're paying to see. You end up seeing a nurse, and the nurse is the person who delivers the program you will see a cardiologist at points in the program, but your main point of contact is the nurse. So if you want to see the cardiologist, you have to pay much more, upwards of 5,000 for an online consultation, for example, if you wanted to do that, which is a cheaper option.
And who is going to be your main target customer? Is it going to be a patient in a rich area, or like a lot of patients in the poor areas?
To start with, we're targeting the middle and emerging middle income market in Karachi, so people who are based in the city itself.
All right.
And so to add to that, we're it's not like it's a range of prices. It's either 200 or 1,000. And we've done some financial projections over the next 3 years, and we found that we can, for every patient paying 1,000 PKR, we can treat a patient paying 200 PKR and still make a profit and be financially sustainable. And the unit economics works out because, as we said on our cost slide, we cut out expensive beds, rent, and cardiologist fees, which is what usually leads to most of the cost for our competitors. And also, as Akhilesh mentioned, our competitors have such high pricing because they're focused on making profit. And the market is very unregulated in Pakistan. So they're free to price it at anything that they like, whereas we are focused on delivering value to the customers and understanding their pain points. So that is another way in which we're able to reduce our costs.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Thank you very much. Very good answers.
Right. Anyone more question? Okay. Thank you very much, Sukun. Next, we have Scaled.
Hi, I'm Natalie, the CEO and founder of Scaled. We are the next generation of injury prevention. Did you know that 1 in 3 people over 65 suffer a fall in the UK each year? And this is true for 50% of people over 80 years. There are currently over 12 million people in the UK aged 65 and above. And this number is increasing due to a global rise in longevity. For individuals, falls cause wrist and hip fractures, and further, a great loss of independence, loss of mobility, isolation, a great fear of falling again, and even death. Falls alone cost the NHS over £2.3 billion each year, which is £73 each second. Our mission at Scaled is aligned with the Government UK Grand Challenge of Healthy Aging, where we want to provide our society today with extra healthy and independent years through injury prevention. Scaled is the world's first nature-inspired material innovation that is flexible in one direction and interlocking in another. This curve of limitation can be set to a custom degree through our algorithm. Further, Scaled is impact absorbing due to its unique geometry. Our algorithm and 3D printing allow mass customization for these scale structures to protect any body area, any body shape for any type of activity. Current orthotics are rigid, bulky, and stigmatized weakness, resulting in protective wearables not being used at all. Competitors mainly focus in the field of either rehabilitation or impact protection, whereas we are capable of both and have our USP in customization. Scaled today is a mechanically and passively activated material innovation, meaning no electronics needed. We only make use of the interlocking effect of the scale structures to prevent any motion exceeding the natural range. It therefore supports human joints only where and when really needed, comparable to the function of a safety net. Scaled improves rehabilitation processes, further protects against injuries, and our vision is to treat the problem at the root and ultimately enable injury prediction through sensors, motion tracking, and AI. This allows us to move from injury protection to predict injuries, accidents in the first place. Our patent is covering the fields of the algorithm, materials, application and manufacturing methods. Scaled application areas are in the field of sports, physiotherapy, medical, industrial safety, and defense, whereas we are currently distributing to sports and physiotherapy, as these routes to market have the lowest regulatory milestones. Our MVP is a customized risk protector, which is today tested with UK's Olympic athletes. This allows us to test scale in the most extreme situations and protect our superheroes of today. With our UK manufacturer, we can deliver over 100,000 customized units each month to make scale available for everyone. Further, for our licensing business model, we develop customized scaled materials, which work as add-on solutions comparable to Gore-Tex. We will move from B2C to B2B. My background is in global innovation design, and my personal ambition is therefore to generate a global positive impact. I want to see scale applied in the real world. Our interdisciplinary team from Imperial College covers the fields of engineering, manufacturing, and product development. And to fill the gaps, we have advisors helping in business, healthcare, and legal challenges. We received support from the MedTech Superconnector. We're featured in world-renowned magazines, and our exclusive Reuters interview reached US national TV. With today's award, we can build our first batch of orthotics, expand our patent internationally, and file for CE and UK CA marking. With your help, we can empower our society today for a more active tomorrow and save the NHS just £22,000 within the last 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our final team scale. Now, judges.
Great pitch. Congratulations. And you mentioned a little bit how what your route to market is going to be. Could you just remind me, have you made any sales, or how has that been going?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Great question. So far, we actually get paid from sports associations to get the product tested. So we have paid feasibility studies and paid product testing with competing athletes internationally, which gives us the chance to get a great user feedback, but as well on product liability early on. The value proposition for athletes is so high, as if you save an injury for an athlete, every day they are not able to train or compete, the value proposition is so much higher than in the big market than commercially. So we're in the early roots, and the next step for us is we're negotiating partnerships with more like small startups to get the licensing model out. So they incorporate in their existing products scaled materials to make them better on the market. Whereas that strategy is helping us to not get like quickly eaten up by big players as Nike, Under Armour, or whatever, where the danger is that innovation takes sometimes longer in big corporations to reach the market ultimately.
I had a question. Thanks so much for the presentation. I had a question on why you, the B2C, B2B sort of route, why do you want to sort of do both? Is there a reason that you maybe wouldn't want to double down on one in the future, being that, you know, potentially licensing and that sort of thing, I would imagine would be potentially a really big opportunity. What in your team is sort of made the decision behind kind of pursuing the B2C sort of route?
Great question. So B2C, ultimately scaled is a material that was meant to be existing product, which in the beginning 6 months ago, people struggled to see this like applied in the real world, where we then decided to take the step to have like one ultimate product to get also tested. So that's the wrist application. As well, the wrist application with this single wrist guard, we have like 15 different sports associations with different applications trying it. So this is really just like helping us to cover initial R&D by having early sales with the wrist guard, where also realizing while developing the wrist guard is that a lot of R&D goes into like the whole wrist guard design, by like how easy is it to put it on one-handed and like for who is it made, where we believe our core innovation and knowledge goes into the scale structure itself. And there has been companies developing knee braces for over a decade and definitely know better how back protectors, shoulder protectors, and all of that works. So we way more want to add the value through scaled as a material technology to add into existing products. And the B2C model really helps us to overcome early R&D costs and to cover that one.
How do you see the market opportunity? How big could this be?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to put it in numbers, as I kind of touched on it. But we start right now with like sports applications, physiotherapy equipment, medical devices, where the whole MedTech superconnector helped us to realize that as you want to go for a medical market, this needs a lot of time and huge costs, and regulations are intense. So that's why kind of we shifted into sports, and through our PR, a lot of sports associations reached out. We have like everyday people asking for like the medical issues, sports applications, and asking for like samples. Whereas right now we're kind of careful with IP. The patent just came back and granted looks really, really good. So now the next step is just to reach international base and then being able to distribute it. Whereas the markets for medical and defense and work safety is like really attractive, but a long shot in covering costs and time and R&D to get there.
All right, thank you. I guess it's then just very important to do proper customer development early on to know where you want to focus first. Thank you.
Thank you to all the startups and judges. And now on to our next speaker.
All right. Thank you so much, all teams. Fantastic ideas. I'm sure the judges and I feel the same, that you have some very powerful, impactful ideas. We do hope that you stay back because now the tough task of judges, they're going to go in a breakout room to discuss the top 3. We're going to announce that in a bit. But before we do that, I have a special address which I want to request Sydney Price. She is an award-winning executive going to talk to us about the purpose of the greater good. She is a founder and CEO of The New Purpose, a conscious leadership company with a vision to advance sustainability and innovation in business. She was awarded Most Influential Woman by CEO Connection 2015. As an ICF certified coach and inspirational facilitator, Sydney continues to take her experiences to the next level by empowering other leaders, businesses, universities, nonprofits, and social entrepreneurs. Let me use this podium to invite Sydney to come on board and share her experiences with us. And I must say that I love the name, The New Purpose, which is fitting in very nicely with what we have been talking about throughout the day itself. So thank you, Sydney, for giving your time. And I look forward to listening to your talk as well. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. I'm going to just share my screen here. I have a presentation, so if you can just bear with me for a second. Great. Perfect. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Great. So hello, everyone. Great to be with you. My name is Sydney Price, and I am here to share my personal journey on how a single company can transform the lives of an entire community of over 20,000 people. My journey began in 2009 as chief merchant and head of direct-to-consumer at Kate Spade & Company. At that time, the founders, Kate and Andy, had just sold their business, so we felt very much like a startup. Our number one priority was to stabilize and grow the business. So at that time, we were not able to create our own CSR initiative. So we wanted to find a partner. So what we did is we formed an exclusive relationship with an organization called Women for Women International. They focus on women in post-conflict countries shift from crisis to stability. So we utilized their artisans, our designs, our training, and then we bought the product back. Here's a photo of us working with their artisans in Bosnia, in Afghanistan, and in Rwanda. And in late 2012, we ended our partnership as Kate Spade & Company was now financially viable and we were ready to bring CSR in-house. Yet these 3 years working with Women for Women were incredible learning experiences. And we had 4 very important learnings, which really formed the foundation of our new program, which was called On Purpose. First, business. There has to be a business imperative: quality product, on-time delivery, better costing, and absolute full transparency. It also had to be profitable, not just for us, but for the partner we were supporting and building on the ground, which made it sustainable. It also had to be fully integrated into our supply chain. And it couldn't be the side project, which so often happens within organizations. And the last piece, but certainly not last, is this heart connection. You know, our employees really wanted to have a direct, hands-on experience with the artisans on the ground and not work through a partner. So in 2013, we created a new social enterprise model called On Purpose. So On Purpose is Kate Spade's social enterprise model through which we taught a group of women in a marginalized community to become a profitable and independent supplier to Kate Spade and the entire fashion industry. They live in Masoro, Rwanda between the ages of 18 and 60. And before working with them, they reported that 87% did not have a formal job, and 95% went through the genocide, and most had a first grade education. So these are not Kate Spade employees, as a reminder, but rather their newest supplier. It's a Rwandan and women-owned for-profit social enterprise. They produce products 12 months out of the year and deliver every 3 months into the 9 countries that Kate Spade has stores. So Kate Spade sees the key to women's economic empowerment, not just training them, but really guiding them to access the global market. So many ask, why did we pick Rwanda? And first of all, because I had been working in other marginalized countries, we picked Rwanda. First of all, it was a country in need. It ranked one of the poorest in the world at the time. The average income per year was $760. It was also a safe place to work. The government was also very pro-business, which is essential, as well as they had very favorable trade laws, AGOA and GSP. Their artisans also had a natural handicraft skill. They had a beautiful embroidery. And we also wanted a rural setting. So it made it more difficult initially not to work in a city, but we also wanted to have a greater impact within the community, and measurement and evaluation was so essential for us to stay on our mission as well as pivot as we needed to go along. So as I built this program, we identified 4 key stakeholders, which really we used as a lens on making all decisions. So the first was the actual supplier that we were building on the ground, called Abihizi Rwanda. The second was the actual worker within the new business. The third was Kate Spade, the customer. And then the fourth is the actual community that we were working in. So here's a great snapshot of how the model actually worked and benefited everyone. So you have the retail partner, Kate Spade, and actually our customers within that, or really any global fashion brand. And then we were essentially buying product from Abihizi that we built, and from their profits, it was reinvested into their community because they're a for-profit social enterprise. It was given back into their employees as well as back into their business. So the on-purpose model was built through a three-phased approach. The first phase was really to build and teach. Building an infrastructure, there was absolutely nothing in this village. So brick by brick, we built a couple of beautiful factories there. We also had to teach the trainer, and the trainer was Kate Spade employees. It was actually a partner on the ground called Karasimbi. And then also we had a partner called Cho, which was one of our handbag manufacturers out of China. The second phase was definitely the most challenging, and it was our transfer knowledge. And we really had to take all of our knowledge and move it to the local talent. And that was not only to build up technical, but management expertise. And then the third phase was really to shift responsibility to ensure sustainability, independence, and long-term viability. So as I mentioned, the knowledge transfer was essential for our success. Here's a snapshot of all the complicated areas that had to be taught to this group of individuals and mastered. So if you look at global industry compliance, abiding by human rights standards, shipping product processes, importing and exporting, labor workplace standards, and then from a global business management, intellectual properties, design and patents, all these tricky trade laws, AGOA, and whatnot. So as I mentioned, there were 4 stakeholders. So really the benefits to the first stakeholder was the actual business that we were building and propping up, which is called Abhisi. And we made it, we didn't come in and take over, and instead we made it a Rwandan and women-owned social enterprise. And it was reinvested into the business, the women, and the entire community. And because this was fully integrated into Kate Spade's supply chain, it was treated as any supplier that we had throughout the world. So it was globally compliant, it had impeccable quality and workmanship. The second stakeholder was actually the employee working within the business. And because they had a consistent income for the first time in their lives, they were actually able to hire neighbors that were unemployed to help gather water, take care of their young kids, prepare meals, send their kids to school, make improvements to their home, and save for the future. And also they were taught a robust life skills program. That life skills program was built through human-centered design, really asking what they needed, and the 5 categories were here. We worked with BSR, her network framework, and developed local program partners. So we had partners on the ground really teaching and working with them on a weekly basis. Here's some great photos of us teaching. And remember, this program still is very viable today, but as we were building and even going on today, the training is consistent day after day, week after week. So the third stakeholder was Kate Spade, and it became a profitable new supplier to us. And and one of the biggest benefits is our employees, we use their expertise to help build this out. Either through design, merchandising, logistics, and it created this incredible heart connection and job loyalty and job satisfaction for our employees. Not because not everyone was able to have a hands-on approach. Once a year, we involved all of our stores throughout the world, as well as our corporate employees, and we had a fundraising day not to prop up the actual for-profit social enterprise, but doing certain projects within the community that would help the entire community. We also involved our customer in that. So we had Shop with Purpose a couple of times a year and focused on what the community needed and what they asked for. This built up a lot more customers for Kate Spade and an incredible loyalty. So what the community asked for and needed was playgrounds was number one. So we built playgrounds for thousands of children. We also built a health clinic that supported over 20,000 individuals. We built a community center and also a sports and learning center. And then the fourth stakeholder was the actual community. And because it was a very rural and an underemployed area, first of all, because of this, there was new economic stimulus coming in. So it lowered unemployment. They were also paying taxes to the community. And because now income was flowing into this area, new businesses were popping up everywhere, like restaurants, seamstresses, hair salons. So the product was at the core of all of this. And because it was fully integrated into our supply chain, the only way you even really realized it was made in Rwanda versus one of our other factories is there was a little hang tag on the product, but it utilized the same colors, patterns, fabrics as mainline. So again, it wasn't this side project, it was fully integrated into it. We also realized that it was not enough to do good through social impact. The product had to be very beautiful and relevant. So here's a great example of just a floor set, which we did every single month. This is a Kate Spade or a Rwandan product here as well as here, and it was integrated within all this other beautiful product. We also had incredible digital exposure. You know, here is a Rwandan product as well as this piano bag, and these two others were made from other areas throughout the world from other factories. Our program got a lot of awards as well as exposure. We won Best Economic Empowerment Program from the US Chamber of Commerce, and we also were studied and endorsed by Georgetown University. They studied it for over 2 years, and now they also teach this within their school. So there were many challenges that we experienced. You know, just to mention a few: poor infrastructure, the roads, the electricity was inconsistent, as well as internet. This whole capacity development of really giving skills to a population that had never been taught at this level before. Also really balancing the economic and social needs, importing all the raw materials, exporting all the finished goods, and really also integrating this new business model within Kate Spade's supply chain. You know, some of the incredible opportunities was to build a supply chain that had a triple bottom line and really considering people, profit, and the planet. Also really shifting the way companies viewed global corporate citizenship and really taking all key stakeholders in consideration when making decisions and attracting this conscious millennial customer. So today, I'm so proud to say, out of 54 countries in Africa, Abahisi is a thriving factory, not only to Kate Spade and Coach and to many other global brands, but they're still located off a little dirt road in a rural community, but they make beautiful products that are globally compliant, and they're thriving. And that's it. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Siti. That was fantastic. I'm sure with the kids around, students listening to it, they get an example out of the new purpose. And I love your slides too, personally. So maybe I'm going to request if there is a way to interact and talk about this a little bit offline as well. But thank you so much for coming and joining us. We at Imperial would love to have you in person as well. Whenever the world returns to normal, it will be a pleasure to have you here. So thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the moment quite a few of you are waiting for, the awards, the top 3 awards. And before I try to invite my Dean Francisco to talk about closing it and awarding the prizes, I was just in the background listening to the judges trying to struggle to decide on the top 3, because quite a few of you are brilliant ideas and they have potential. And I must say, not only the 7 finalists that actually came about and spoke today, but it is all of them. We had a competition even to come to this 7 numbers. We were struggling with 15 in total. who were very close to making up to the top 7. But so thank you so much for all of you to participate. I can also tell you that all of you will be given opportunity to talk to the judges and the people who are attending in the breakout room after we have Francisco trying to announce this awards. So let me invite Francisco, please turn on your mic as well. The moment people are waiting for.
All right. Thank you very much, Sankalp. And before announcing the winners, which I'm delighted to do, I want to reiterate the point that that I started to make earlier on, but that Sankalp just brought about how incredible the projects are, and and how delighted we are to have the opportunity to learn about those and to hopefully contribute to their amplification. I mean, we are going to announce a few winners that within a difficult competition, the judges felt that that were potentially a little bit a step ahead, but really it's an amazing set of projects, and I'm really delighted to learn about them and to be presenting here some of these awards, and to do this at the end of such a wonderful set of discussions, conversations, dialogues, challenges as well on impact, on purpose, and about the social dimension of what we do, which is of course so important. So with that in mind,
Francisco, can I just request everyone, all participants, to actually turn on their video if you can, if you're around. Maybe it's a nice moment to capture the moment when we announce it as well. So bring it on, turn on your cameras. It's good to see smiling faces as well. Yes, Francisco, please.
Very good. No, that's a very good that's a very good point. So the third prize of today's competition is going to go to the team Water, and so congratulations. Wonderful to have you, and congratulations on your project, and I'm sure that many other successes that are going to follow on from today, and that you're already been able to get to until the day, and hoping that this award is going to contribute to take it to the next step. So after that, the second prize for today is going to go to the team Cleanest Diapers, and so congratulations. Really, delightful. Such an important issue all around the world, and such a great idea, and so delighted to have you here today, and to be handing you this award. And then the first and most expected award has been decided by the judges to go to the next cath. And so congratulations on that. Catheters are, of course, something that people struggle all around the world in such important ways, and it's really a really interesting and amazing idea that we very much believe it's gonna make a difference around the world, and delighted to be able to create a little bit of an amplification and a little bit of help to these awardees on what they have been able to accomplish. And I'm really delighted to be here announcing them and celebrating this impact challenge, and how much brilliant ideas by wonderful teams can make a huge difference around the world. That's the entire premise behind the Ideas to Impact Challenge. And every year that I come here with Sankalp and the rest of the Gandhi Centre team, I'm always amazed by the creativity, the idea, and the possibilities that the teams bring. And that's certainly true to everybody that was here tonight, and certainly for those that we that we're attributing the prizes to. And I, of course, would like to not only thank our speakers, the team that has organized it, but also our judges. I mean, Sankalp was relating to me a little bit some of the struggle to get to these decisions, and we very much value your time, your involvement, and your contributions to get to this decision. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm handing it back to Sankalp, who will take us from here. Thank you, everybody. Congratulations, and looking forward to see you in a camera, in a screen, or hopefully also sometime here on campus at some point.
Thank you so much, Francisco, and fantastic. Congratulations to all the teams that participated. Some of you won it, but it is a journey that you have started to make a real impact. And for us, the creativity that you bring on board is essential to making that real social impact. It's not the idea, it's the impact that would matter. And you have already started creating that ripple of change that I keep on talking about. So thank you so much. So what we want to do, because we have some judges as well, Simon, maybe, I don't know if the other judges are there or not, but what we are going to do, we'll have even though we are virtual, but let's use this opportunity to celebrate your ideas, but also get some feedback, because that is something essential. And sometimes with the constraints of time and the virtuality, we are not able to do so. So what we have requested in the team is to create breakout rooms so that all of you can be in some breakout rooms, and we'll try to chat for a bit. So that if there is any feedback that people want to give to any of those teams, please do so. So we will have 7 breakout rooms for the 7 finalist teams, and we will go up and down in those teams itself. But before I let everyone go into the breakout rooms, I sincerely want to thank the team, Simon, Hannah, Yin, and brilliant organizing, trying to put everything behind them. Even the marketing team of Imperial trying to put this behind them to generate that engagement. So thank you all. It's a pleasure to work on this with you all every time, every year. Every year we want to do something different. So thank you very much. Anything to add, Simon? You want to say something what judges said before we go to breakout room?
No, I think you've summarized it wonderfully. Thank you so much for everyone that participated. It was really impressive listening to all the ideas.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you so much. Stick around for some time if you can, if you have time, and let's have a chat on the side. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a nice day.